High frequency. Yeah. Sync up. Already. Yay. I get up with the frequency each and every morning. Thanks, practice gratitude, commence brainstorming. Live, awake, excited, new day, new me. TSA, courtesy of JRE and Scot-free. Too many folks shallow, scared to drown in the deep end. And I ain't pointing fingers, best believe I was one of them. The pain I was numbing it, self-inflicted punishment. The streets I was running in led me to consciousness. Yes, they can steal my flows, but can't block my shine, baby. You see my glow? Now I live in the light, radiating love. Sun, you're a star, as below, so above. Am I too metaphysical? Are you over analytical? So many situations get critical. I'm a warrior, survivor is an understatement. Started subterranean, now we in the cosmos on some Milky Wavy shit. Sun-kissed, melanin rich, health is wealth, we live abundant. Connected with the oneness, I'm off my dumb shit. I bring to you substance more specific, life is synchronistic. All is energy, fact, over fiction when I rap. That high frequency, yeah, we on that. Sync with the most divine, catch contact, physicality beyond that. High frequency, we on that. Mind over matter, thoughts not scattered. Co-stars, co-creating, spiral up, no latitude, heaven or hell. Then you leave a trail, the high and low polarities, the vibrations, they all real.
Day to day just hoping, going through the motions, staring at the doors, who could ever get this open? Till I uncovered the secret to keeping it real. I got in touch with my soul, expand my frequency field. We play and follow the leader ain't going nowhere. That's why I'm living my life with a sovereign mind. All I want in this world is to spread love and greatness to you, using my music for we out of time. So for the divine, I'm doing my due diligence, giving some peace to views that's too militant. Doing it different, I got purpose and position. Feel the vibration, transmission is the mission. Need you to listen to these words, my dude. I swear my third eye got a bird's eye view. And do you wanna sync up? Cause I do. Surfing this wave, follow as we ride through.
All is energy, fact, over fiction when I rap. That high frequency, yeah, we on that. Sync with the most divine, catch contact, physicality beyond that. High frequency, we on that. Mind over matter, thoughts not scattered. Co-stars, co-creating, spiral up, no latitude, heaven or hell. It's in you, leave a trail. The high and low polarities, the vibrations, they all real.
Let it marinate, cause this is very great. To every state, the burden on my back, well, I carry weight. High frequency, high power, free spirit. Talking to the man upstairs, and yeah, he hear it. Man, I'm riding the wave, inspired by the days when we sparked up, that was the light of the haze. But now I'm synced up, yeah, my drink's up. Am I drinking again? Well, you know, yeah, the gig's up. Freedom ain't free, believe them, they not me. The oppressor knows my melanin rich, and I'm scot-free. That means I got away. BS, not today. Stop and say we good, okay, no more drops today. This the high frequency, they gon' feel this. Still with optimism, but still I'm the realist. They gon' feel this, yeah, real quick. Bring the chorus in, that's real shit.
All is energy, fact, over fiction when I rap. That high frequency, yeah, we on that. Sync with the most divine, catch contact, physicality beyond that. High frequency, we on that. Mind over matter, thoughts not scattered. Co-stars, co-creating, spiral up, no latitude, heaven or hell. It's in you, leave a trail. The high and low polarities, the vibrations, they all real. Peace to the gods, brother Yusef-El. High frequency radio, yeah, we on that. Peace, brother Paul Savage, you already know. You were locked in, tuned in live. High frequency radio. Sync up.
You're listening to Yusef-El on the baddest radio network on the planet, High Frequency Radio.
Yo, arbitration, arbitrarium, arcarious, archery, archetyping, area variance, backside, bad character, badge and badger, bag of bell bonded, and banker, cabalist, cabinet council, calendar, campaign, cambio, incallible, defended, demanded, demarcation, demeanor, demonstrate, demonization, escrow, estimate, estate, and elevate, emporium, endowment, empower, and siente, fiduciary, fabricate, facilitate, facious, factor, and for cultivate, gauge, gavel, general, and gainful, gale, grantor, give bore, and gamble, habeas corpus, habalist, and habbo, hawk, hammurabi, hand soaking, and hallow. Immigrant, immediately imminent, jailer, jettison, John Doe and Jesuit, jurisdiction, kidnapping the kindred, long land larceny and latifundus, Makeda, magistrate and Magna Carta, malfactor, malagry, malus and mala, namium, name and nationality, natural law, naturalization, nativity, oath obedience, objection, obligation, occupy, offer, offender, operation, phobia, persona, pact in parliament, partition, passport, parole, evidence, qualification, quamdiu and foro, queen question, way, inqualifiable, race, railroad, rebut, recognition, recoverer, relate, relieve, religion, black law, dictionary, 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 black law, this is my black law, dictionary, black law, dictionary, black law, dictionary, black law, this is my black law, dictionary, black law, dictionary, black law, dictionary, black law, this is my sovereignty, scriptum and secretary, security, seduce, said query, tacit, taxes, tenor and tannis, unanimity, unauthorized, uninalienable, undue, unavailable, vain victim, vendition, and vandal, verdict volume, vested in war, whereas Zion yield, and Zen jazz. Dictionary, yeah man, my black law dictionary, man. This is my black. You try to get your property back, man. You try to get out of jail. Read the book, man. Look up these words. Maybe it'll help the case. For real. Man, extend your vocabulary, man. Extend your mind, man. It's my black law dictionary.
You're listening to Yusef-El on the baddest radio network on the planet, High Frequency Radio.
Peace to God. Peace to God. You are listening to High Frequency Radio. High Frequency Radio. High Frequency Radio. I'm your host, Yusef-El. Welcome to another edition of the Natural Long Hour, y'all. Natural Long Hour, y'all. Natural Long Hour, y'all. welcome to another edition of the Natural Law Hour. Natural Law Hour, y'all. Get into some good esoteric discussion. Guys. Natural Law Hour, y'all. Natural Law Hour, y'all. Natural Law Hour, y'all. Natural Law Hour, y'all. Hour, y'all. Hour, y'all. Natural Law Hour, y'all.
The Matrix is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy. But when you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? I was... Look again. Read it.
This isn't the Matrix?
No. It's another training program designed to teach you one thing. If you are not one of us, you are one of them.
What are they?
Sentient programs. They can move in and out of any software still hardwired to their system. That means that anyone we haven't unplugged is potentially an agent. Inside the Matrix, they are everyone, and they are no one. We have survived by hiding from them, by running from them. But they are the gatekeepers. They are guarding all the doors, they are holding all the keys, which means that sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight them.
Someone.
I won't lie to you, Neil. Every single man or woman who has stood their ground, everyone who has fought an agent has died. But where they have failed, you will succeed.
Why?
I've seen an agent punch through a concrete wall. Men have emptied entire clips at them and hit nothing but air. Yet their strength and their speed are still based in a world that is built on rules. Because of that, they will never be as strong or as fast as you can be.
What are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?
No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
Shalom. This is Mary Omni from the World Government House of King David, Holy Covenant Constitutional Enforcer. This is a Republic Notice. The title of this Republic Notice is called What the Moorish Nation Fails to Understand About Law. What the Moorish Nation fails to understand about law. A couple people have requested what I think of the Moors and wanted to get me to comment on some of the things they've been doing lately and just their whole standing on nationality law, their ways of thinking. And so this video is partly my opinion and then it's partly truth of God's truth and fact. I'm going to start with God's truth first. God Almighty, first truth and law. God Almighty first truth and law is the law of one. And that's why his holy covenant has one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, you can think this is a coincidence. You can think that this is the white man's. But I'm going to tell you, God is in everything. God Almighty hand is in everything. Don't be fooled by the world. Now, when it comes to the Moorish nation, when we say one nation under God, indivisible, this doesn't match what the Moorish nation is trying to do. They're trying to say they are separate from other black Americans, and they have a separate system from other black Americans. In other words, they want to be a specialty black Americans, that has a specialty law outside the majority of black Americans. And if you're not one of them, then you don't come under their specialty law and their specialty protections and their specialty nationality. And this is a failure to understand God Almighty law of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And this goes back to the treaty that was signed with the Moors in 1787. They wanted a treaty separate from the blacks that they thought they was above, the blacks that was enslaved. They said that they didn't want to be, stopped because they were separate and they was Moors and they was, a foreign nation and they was a God-sovereign nation, and therefore you hold them other blacks in captivity, but don't put your hands on me, because we're protected by, Morocco or Mauritania, and we don't want you to get us mixed up with your Negro slaves, because we're Negroes. We don't want you to get us mixed up with them because we're Moors. And it's coming out that some in this Moorish mentality of separatism may have participated in the slave trade and the actual captivity of the holy nation of Judah Israel, which is the one nation, okay? Judah Israel is the one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And it's where the majority of constitutional republic black Americans are. They're Judean and they're Judaic, and they're in the Holy Covenant as one non-consenting, blameless nation under God Almighty. Now, the Moors in North America, who's calling themselves Moors, when they don't understand the law of one and the law of God, they fail to understand that as a people, we are special, including the Moors. I'm not taking away their specialty. Their specialty, but they're not special outside of other blacks in America. Because we have, as black Americans, we have what you call the God particle. That's why we're the God namesake. And with this God particle and God namesake, we span the globe. So to say we just Mauritania or Moors, forget that we have been in several kingdoms all over the earth. So if we would be anything on the earth, it would be called Earthesians or Earthians, if you want to name a place on the earth. But we're interstellar and we're terrestrial because we're God particle, and we're the human part of God particle walking the earth. And therefore, we are one with God Almighty and His nation So therefore, that's why we have the namesake, and the namesake is the truest form of the God sovereign, not a place or not a country. The namesake of Judah or Yahudah is the true God sovereignty. The true God sovereignty, the true law of God's sovereignty, because you can't get no higher than a namesake. You can name a place like, say, I'm Moors from Mauritania, but that's not higher than being the namesake of God Almighty, because there's no higher law than the scepter of God Almighty and the namesake of God Almighty. And Moors is one of the kingdoms and places that God Almighty has been, because God Almighty namesake would be interstellar and terrestrial. So therefore, they've been from the cosmic to spanning the whole earth. So when you say you Moors from this foreign nation, you want to identify yourself as one separate from black Americans, like Public Mystery Babylon. So what they're doing is imitating Public Mystery Babylon, and they think they can serve two masters. They want to imitate Public Mystery Babylon and say, oh, well, they're treated differently from me. I come under this. Even though they do the right thing in Acts and Judges for jurisdiction. But they don't understand when you use the Constitution, you cannot use it as separate from other black Americans. And in the Constitution, black Americans are Judah, the God sovereign namesake. You know, and we are many things as the God sovereign namesake. We are many things. We are Egyptians, we are Moors, we are Nubians, we are, you know, we are even Roman, we are even Greek. We are everything because we are God namesake. The God particle in us spans everything that has taken place on earth. That is the true law. We are one with everything that has taken place on earth and every empire that has taken place on earth. This is why we are the true law and the scepter after God's name, Judah or Yehudah. Now, this is what I want Moors to understand. And that treaty of 1787, they wanted a treaty in spite of seeing blacks in involuntary servitude and mistreated. Now, what they don't know is as long as they was on this land as a foreign nation trying to get a treaty, that treaty conflicts itself because the fact that consent to involuntary servitude existed at the time of the Moorish Treaty. Consent to involuntary servitude. So you got consent and non-consent. You got legal consent to involuntary servitude. So when you sign a paper or a treaty as a foreign nation, what you got was consent to involuntary servitude. So if you was legal then you consented to involuntary servitude on this soil. That's all you did was consented to involuntary servitude. Now, if you say you was foreign and you consented to involuntary servitude, then you wasn't part of this jurisdiction. See, the jurisdiction that made them above just being involuntary servitude was the fact that they was a part of the several colonies or the several nations. And if you wasn't a part of the several 13 colonies or 13 nations and you signed a treaty consenting to involuntary servitude, what you did was said you consent to your own slavery because as a foreign nation of Moors, okay? See, it's a little bit more sophisticated than you think because as a foreign nation from the outside, the United States signed several treaties. But to make sure them treaties meant nothing, it was a contradiction that they signed. The contradiction was they had consent to involuntary servitude. So when they signed all the treaties with these foreign nations like Mauritania or Tripoli, it consented, the nations who signed it with them consented to involuntary servitude because they wasn't protected by constitutional jurisdiction as a foreign nation. They came as a foreign nation. They was not protected by constitutional jurisdiction like those who were in the Constitution, like the constitutional signers and writers. They was protected by constitutional jurisdiction. They had the jurisdiction of consent to involuntary servitude as the legal jurisdiction. But as a foreign nation, you don't own jurisdiction. So you don't really own the law of it. So what you got was a byproduct of it, and the byproduct of it means that you are a subject. And as a subject, you consented to your own involuntary servitude. And that's the Moorish treaty. See, that's the Moorish treaty in truth. See, they have played the game with themselves because they tried to separate themselves from God Almighty. And if they're basing it on this Moorish treaty, they're saying they are in truth subjects, okay? They are saying they are in true subjects. See, it's like the race between the tortoise and the hare. They thought they can speed through it faster than the rest of the blacks who systematically had faith, because we are saved by faith and grace. Grace through faith of God Almighty. That's how He protects us. Faith through grace. And therefore, to show you how that Moorish stuff was just squashed in truth, when Dred Scott went to the Supreme Court, he wanted to claim his freedom that his former slave captor had given him after he died, and the slave captor wife said, no, I want the legal rights to this slave as my inheritance. And the court then made a decision and said this. It said, there is no law or rights of any black man in this country that we will respect because he doesn't have legality and legal contracting rights in this country, and he can be arrested whether black, slave, or free. Black, slave, or free. Now, when you say black, slave, or free black, that meant that squashed that Moorish treaty, which was a real subject treaty anyway. That squashed that, which was a real treaty of them being subjects because they did not own the jurisdiction of law. So they became subjects of the jurisdiction, okay? So you had to be a part of the contract to own the jurisdiction. And the treaty of a foreign nation was not part of that contract. We made treaties with Tripoli, this and that, but you don't understand God protected America from the beginning through His Judah scepter, which was put in there as involuntary. So you can't have consent, jurisdiction, and
peace to the gods, peace to the gods. You're listening to High Frequency Radio. I'm your host, Yusef-El. Welcome to the morning show with Yusef-El. It is Thursday, December 24th, 2015. I'm broadcasting live from Atlanta, Georgia. You know, that audio, what I like about that audio, why I play that audio, is I hear a sister that she doesn't have a good grasp of positive law, or she can't articulate it, I would say, very well. But she does have a good grasp of divine law. And her premise is the same premise that I share, that a lot of Moors have started to put too much faith in men and not enough faith in the Creator. And, they're too focused on these positive laws outside of these divine laws, and not understanding that there isn't any really remedy in positive law. The only real remedy are in the real laws, and the only real laws that exist are the divine laws that operate on everyone, and which are not respect of persons, your religious beliefs. Divine laws don't give a fuck if you're a Moor, if you claimed your nationality. It doesn't give a fuck about that. Doesn't care if you filed a UCC1. It doesn't care if you call yourself a Christian, Muslim, or Jew. It doesn't care about that. Divine laws were not created for man-made institutions. Divine laws were created to keep the universe in harmony and operating in an orderly fashion. And the only way to defeat nature is to obey her. So today, I know yesterday I said I'm going to open up the phone lines, and I'm going to open the phone lines early, but, I was inspired yesterday by one of the phone calls. If you were listening yesterday, you probably heard me, the gentleman from New York who calls in all the time. He basically had a problem with, in a child custody situation. And, it made me think about some things because, I've done a lot of research. Let me preference what I want to say. There's a lot of stuff I don't talk about over the air. I've been doing this 10 years, and I'd say the first 5 years that I was in this, I was doing it every day. Studying every day. Every day. Every day. And the first 3 years just really intensely. And 5 years in, and then I went into a mode where I started, kind of having a business for myself, helping people with foreclosures, things like that. So where my study habits kind of weren't as intense as they were initially. A lot of you are going through that right now. When you first find out this information, you may feel anger. You may feel like you've been cheated out of something all of your life. Why am I just learning this right now? And so you got this voracious appetite for knowledge, and which is why I come on the air every day, because people want to listen every day. They want to learn something. And it's needed. I figured that I said, man, I had to be on the air every day. This is too much information. How is somebody going to come on once a week and talk about this stuff? Really? Ain't no way in hell you can learn this stuff. Somebody come on once a week. Somebody needs to be on every day discussing this information, because time is of the essence, and, we got to know, and people are hungry for the information. But yesterday, and the reason I played this audio first with the sister, and she's talking about the law of one, is I wanted to talk about this thing about marriage and law. And first of all, I want to put in an indictment to the Christians. The Christians are responsible for the divorce rate that's in America today. They're responsible for broken homes, broken families, all the preachers out there, all the so-called female preachers, all the priestesses and prophetesses, and all those demons out there, because that's what they are. Because when you read the Bible, it warns you about these individuals, that these people on stage and everything. They're responsible for this because they're proselytizing a doctrine that is adverse to natural law. They're not teaching their people God's law. They're teaching people to go against God's law, and they're teaching people that it's okay. They're teaching people that it's okay. And this is, and you can see it. It's really not something that's up for debate, because all you got to do is look at the state of the world, look at the state of this country right now. You can see that this doctrine that they're proselytizing, this grace doctrine, this grace doctrine that's misconstrued, it is not in accord with anything Jesus Christ said. They can't find anything that Jesus said out of his mouth. They are following a man named Paul. That's who they're following. They're following a man named Paul, and they know it. That is the doctrine that they abide by. That is their God. That is their Savior. It is not Jesus Christ. Do not listen to these people. Okay? And the reason I wanted to talk about this today, because we got a problem in this country. We got a problem with divorce. We got a problem with child custody. And there's a lot of talk about nation building. And when you look in the conscious community, you see a lot of people grab the mic and they talking about things, and then behind the scenes they're engaging in all kind of activity and so forth. And one of the primary things that I looked at is, I'm like, man, everybody talking about nation building. How the hell you gonna build a nation? Ain't no families. That don't make no sense to me. It's like, how are you gonna build a nation? I mean, you got to put that first. How is there going to be a nation of people, whatever you call it, Moorish nation or whatever? It ain't no families. It's like we live in a society today where you got baby mamas and baby daddies, which are bastards. And I'm going to talk about that today, because the law doesn't recognize the word baby mama or baby daddy. The law recognizes the word bastard. All right, so we have all these bastard children, who have no standing in law, by the way. And then also we have situations where, people are defiling the marriage bed and the marriage covenant, not only to the vows that they made to the Creator, but also the institution itself on a divine level. And it is something that doesn't get talked about very well. The Christian preachers, they stay away from it because most of their members are violators of these laws and covenants, and they're not going to bring it up because, they got to, maintain the integrity of their congregations. But, me, when you come and listen to high frequency radio, I don't give a fuck about what y'all think. I'm going to tell you the fucking truth, though it be bitter to others. You can get mad about it or whatever, but I'm going to tell you, women can get mad. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to tell you the truth. And you can come and say, well, that's that white man stuff. Let me preference it with this. White man didn't create anything. They got everything from us. They just giving that shit back to you, dumbass. They got all the shit from you. All the laws, everything that they're learning, they got it from you. Your sleep ass can't remember the fuck what you told them, and then when they give it back to you, you think it's some white man shit. It's not some white man shit. That's your shit. They took it from you and running the world with it and trying to make sure you're asleep. So this is not a religious thing. This is a very, very tricky road I'm going to try to walk today, because I got to try to use the Bible, and I got to kind of use science, simultaneously. And a lot of people don't like the Bible, and that's only because they're illiterate, or haven't read it. Usually people say they don't like something because they haven't read it and understand it. The Bible is not a The Bible is, the Christians have made you not like the Bible because they have adulterated it with their dogma and try to foist that dogma on everybody and make people feel guilty for not coming into alignment to the way that they think in their limited and very infantile way of thinking, if I must say so, very profane. But that is why you probably don't like the Bible, because you look at the hypocrisy that goes on in Christianity. You see the ignorance that is so pervasive, and it is something that is an anathema to the person who is seriously seeking enlightenment. So today I'm going to attempt to, discuss this volatile subject, because I think it is something that needs to be talked about. And I'm going to start out using the Bible first, and then I'm going to go into some sort of esoteric conversation about this particular subject. Now, I am of the stance that marriage is really between people who have not previously been engaged in sexual activity. And there is a reason for that, and primarily the woman, because the woman, nature did not divine to put a hymen on a man, it's on a woman. And there's a reason for this, and that's going to get into the esoteric part. Because a lot of people, when they look about the laws, they think the laws are just arbitrary and capricious. And this is why you'll have someone who claims to be in the conscious community, they'll say, I don't follow that Bible stuff. When you hear them say that, what you know is that they don't know law. They don't know divine law. Because if they knew divine law, then they would be able to perceive it in all of the religions, and no matter what shape it takes form. Because what happens is you got people who were very learned, who understood divine law, and they attempted to convey it to other people around the world. And some people weren't that very good at doing it. So you'll look at something like in the Bible, where you'll read some of these writers in here, they're attempting to convey divine law to you in their very limited understanding, or, you know, or in a way that is expressed with the, that is contemporary with the time that they lived in. And, you know, 2,000 years later, you're getting it and you're trying to decipher what it is they're saying, and you're listening to some preacher who is woefully ignorant about all of this stuff, or who is intentionally attempting to mislead you, because you have that too. You have preachers out there who do know the divine laws who intentionally mislead you. They devils. All right? So you got that going on out there too. So when we talk about, you know, these divine laws in marriage, I want you to, you know, have in your mindset when I talk about these laws coming out of Leviticus, Deuteronomy, I want you to look and see, is there any sort of application in the laws of nature in what's being said? I'll give you a quick example. You've already heard me say it before. When we talk about the dietary laws that are in the Bible, like, for instance, don't eat pork. You know, and what a Christian will do is they'll say it's okay to eat pork because we're not under the laws anymore. And I will tell them it's impossible for you not to be under the law, because the laws of nature dictate that there is food that belongs in your body and there's food that does not belong in your body. And if you eat something that your body has not naturally been constituted to assimilate, you're going to get a dis-ease or some sort of unbalancement that's going to occur. That's why I'm always saying that diet, I think that food is like the most, you know, easiest example to express to someone about law. Because health, that's why health comes first. Health is a very big indication of whether or not you're abiding by the law or not, you know, because it doesn't recognize your religious beliefs. It just is what it is, okay? You know, I know you're a Christian, but you just put something in here that's going to make you sick. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but that doesn't belong in here, okay? And that's how natural law operates. It's not a respecter of the person, of the individual. It operates, it devolves on everyone equally. Liberty and justice for all. As the sister was speaking in the opening conversation, I was listening. I really enjoyed listening to her speak about that, the law of one, because her premise was, you know, right and exact in what she was saying, is that some people have this preconceived notion, even in the Moorish science community, you got people who think that they're special, or that they're above somebody else. And I'm here to tell you, you ain't special. There's nobody who's special. You all come from the one. And you all reflections of the one. When you look at your brother, you're looking at God. When you look at your sister, you're looking at God. Everybody comes from the one. So when I was studying this stuff, I was today, you know, I said, okay, how am I going to present this? I said, okay, I got to put it to, you know, I said, first of all, I think I'm going to address the, you know, the biblical aspects of it, of everything. I said, okay, let me start there. And I said, I think I can, you know, let's start with the Bible, because allegedly, you know, there's some Moors that believe that we are under the laws. You know, I had a brother on, you know, from the Moorish. He's a Grand Sheik, and he was talking about we're supposed to be under the laws. And I'm of that same belief. I believe that yes, we are supposed to be under the laws, you know, of the Old Testament, And let me see if I can pull this back up. And I'm going to start with some verses out of the Bible. And that's where we're going to start. And the challenge is going to be, this is what I did. I started to look and I started to see, okay, when I read something out of the Bible, does it have any basis in natural law? That is always the question I ask myself. You know, I'm not just reading, oh, the Bible says, you know, you can't do this or that. No, I don't do that. I look at it and I'm saying, okay, well, how does this have any basis in, you know, in the law? You know? Like, for instance, it says in Leviticus 21:13-14, and he shall take a wife in her virginity, a widow or divorced woman or a woman who has been defiled or a prostitute, these he shall not marry, but he shall take his wife a virgin of his own people. All right, so this is one of the laws. People saying we're supposed to be living by the laws. And of course, in today's society, this is a very, very offensive verse in the Bible, especially to women who, or even men too, who've been remarried and things like that, who haven't married a virgin, things like this. And this is an offensive verse, in the Bible. Obviously, people don't want to hear this. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm not a virgin. I've been married before, blah, 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 blah. So once again, I say, okay, well, I'm looking at this. Okay, does this have any basis in natural law? Okay, and it does. Okay, it's like, okay, what happens at the point when you have sex with an individual for the first time? Is there any cause that's going to create a corresponding effect between that union of a man and a woman? Is there something inscribed on the spirits of both of the individuals that is going to be indelibly, imprinted on that, for eternity? Is there something? Does that happen? That would be the question. And is there something that can later come along that can remove that or cleanse that or something like that, or make that, insignificant or something? These are the questions that we have to ask about this. Because when I look at this verse, this is a law, this is the book of Leviticus 21:13. Now, if you're not a Jew or you're not of Judah, then this doesn't apply to you, because, and this is why the Christians don't follow it, because they don't know who they are. They're Gentiles. They follow Paul. So they don't know who they are. So they follow a doctrine of a people who do not know who they are. That is what that doctrine, that's a doctrine of a people who do not know. They can't. If you ask them who they are, they don't know. They read the book of Romans and I ask them, are you a Roman? I don't know. Are you from Corinth? Are you a Galatian? Are you from Thessaly? Are you from, if you ask them these questions, it's like, because these were these letters or two. These are to these people. Are you one of these descendants of these people? You ask them these questions. They don't know. So I was reading this, and it was a lot of stuff. And one of the biggest things was about this divorce thing, because with the divorce thing, what's happening is it's engendering and fostering a lot of animosity between males and females. It is making people bitter. It's causing single-parent households where women are struggling to raise children on their own. It's causing women to go in and seek public assistance from the government and subjecting themselves to oversight from the government. It's creating, not only by disease, we could talk about disease too. That's another thing, the diseases that are running rampant. It is a plague that is plaguing our community. And I don't think anybody has properly addressed it, because everybody wants to kind of sidestep this particular topic because they don't want to offend anyone, because it's going to offend someone. And I think there's a problem with that, because I think you got to speak the truth or it would be bitter to others. You got to at least, address these situations. They look, okay, let's talk about this. What are you doing? What is happening when you divorce? Because we all see the detrimental effects of divorce. I'm a product of divorced family, and I saw the difference between when my mother and father was together and the difference in my life after they got a divorce. And I also saw that, it didn't seem like my mother was too much concerned about us. She was more concerned about her own happiness and so forth, more so than the happiness of her children, And I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's not an indictment against my mother or anything like that. She was doing at the time, she thought she was doing what was best. Whether it was for her or not, I'm not sure. But, she just felt like she was in a situation she no longer wanted to be in anymore. But the thing is that, what is the effect of that? I'm looking at the effects of all. My father tells me all the time, if your mother had stayed with me, you wouldn't have gone to prison. And I probably wouldn't, because I was in sports. I was an athlete. I was a top athlete. I was doing all things. I was doing this little, what is this, like Cosby Show type thing. We kind of like, I had that situation kind of going on. And then after that, it was straight to the hood, and things just changed in my life. And I had I was introduced to an entirely different paradigm. And, not to say I don't apologize. My friends are listening and everything. I value all my friends everywhere I live. I wouldn't change where I grew up for anything. Oak Cliff. Shout out to Oak Cliff. Also, y'all check out the movie they made about our high school. It's called Carter High. That's the high school I graduated from. So, this is in response to Friday Night Lights, that old bullshit that them crackers put out there. They trying to make us look bad. You know what I'm saying? Go look at Friday Night Lights first. And after you watch that, go back and look at the real story and watch the Carter High story. But anyway, a little bit of background. But with this marriage thing, it gets into this thing, a lot of the questions about virginity, who marriage is for, is it lawful to have a divorce, do bastard children have any kind of standing in law, any legal type of standing and so forth, and I, as I look at all of this, and I'm not going to claim to have, exhausted all of my research in these particular topics. I want to, also make that statement. But it did cause me, when I was looking at slavery, because all this started from my study of slavery. And studying slavery, because I wanted to think, okay, why do these people think they can just enslave us? Especially in light of the natural laws. If these people understand natural law, why do they think? Because these people who are in control of the planet, they understand natural law. So in understanding that natural law, what makes them think that they can enslave someone without some sort of repercussion or some sort of karmic effect, that's going to redound back to them? So it's like, so I had to think about that. That was the premise that I kind of like, stood on first. I'm like, okay, what do these people know that's allowing them to do the things that they do without a fear that something is going to come back on them? And then that's when I got into Kabbalion, and that's when I, the law of rhythm and so forth, what they use, where they can understand how they can use higher laws against lower laws to defeat karma or to put off karma for a little while. And also that the universe is a free will universe, that primarily that there are no victims, and that everyone is really responsible for themselves, that it's a free will universe, that you are the creator of everything. And that's why I talk about that so much, because a lot of us get in the habit of blaming. We get into this blame game or pointing the finger, and you got to be real cautious of that, because the more you point the finger, the more you defeat your own divinity. The more you point the finger, the more you defeat your own divinity. So, that was the premise that I used in approaching all of this. I said, well, it's got to be something that we're doing to ourselves. It has to be something that we're doing to ourselves. And they're standing back just watching us. They may be influencing us, and that's something else that, to use the, Christian concept of the devil is a liar. The devil may do many things, but one thing the devil does not do is he doesn't make you do anything. That would defeat the whole purpose of him attempting to prove that you're not worthy. He's trying to demonstrate that you're not worthy. And you can't do that when you're making somebody do something. So you have to do it on your own accord. So the decision is always yours. And to be ignorant is also a decision as well. That is a choice. Not to choose is a choice. And so I looked at all of these things. And so then when I went into the Bible, I kind of looked at the Old and the New Testament. And there was I started, of course, with, Jesus. That's where I always start, because, Jesus is supposed to be the one the Christians are following. They supposed to be the ones the Christians are following. They call themselves Christians. That means they're Christ-like, but they don't quote him or anything. So there's this verse in the Bible, and it says, and the Pharisees came up to him and tested him by asking, is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? Okay, now, the reason that they're testing him is because in Deuteronomy, it does allow a man to divorce his wife. And, in Deuteronomy, Moses wrote that in Deuteronomy. But there's a reason for it. her uncleanliness or something like this, And so when you really read Deuteronomy, you'll understand what Jesus is going to say next. He says, is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? He answered, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So there are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. So after reading this, I'm wondering how a judge or how a preacher or anyone could divorce someone. And then that's when I came to understand, like somebody first alerted me to this and said, man, when you marry someone, you always married to them. It said when they give you a divorce, you still married to the person. That's just a legal document that they put in. They just separating you on the legal side of everything. But, as far as spiritually, as far as in the spiritual world and everything, that union is still there. Somebody kind of told me that. And then that's when I did the research on the marriage license. And researching the marriage license, that's what I found, that somebody went and had a discussion about the marriage license. They said, okay, well, is this marriage license, does it mean anything? Does it mean anything? And he basically said marriage license don't have anything to do with anything spiritual, anything like that. It has absolutely nothing to do with, your feelings about God or anything like that. So it has nothing to do with that. It's strictly for business purposes. So when you get this divorce, it's almost like you're dissolving some sort of business partnership or something like that, from what I can get from it, everything that I've seen from what I can get from it. So let me start out with this definition of marriage. Marriage, the act of uniting a man and a woman for life, wedlock, the legal union of a man and a woman for life. Now notice they put for life on both of these, they preference it. Marriage is the act of uniting a man and a woman for life. Wedlock, the legal union of a man and a woman for life. So marriage is the word for life, I guess, on the private sense, and wedlock is the legal sense. It says marriage is a covenant both civil and religious, by which the parties engage to live together in mutual affection and fidelity till death shall separate them. Now, I'm going to get to the definition of profane. Profane, to violate anything sacred or any ordinance of God, such as marriage, to treat it with abuse, irreverence, or contempt, to put to a wrong use. That's to profane a thing, which most people are doing when they marry for all of the wrong reasons. Because he got money. Because, he can take care of all of these different things. Because she got a fat ass or whatever. You're profaning the institution of marriage. Divorce, to dissolve the marriage contract and thus to separate husband and wife. To separate as a married woman from the bed and board of her husband, to force asunder, to take away, to put away, to part. And then it says Matthew 19:6, let me repeat, there are no more twain but one flesh. What therefore, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. All right. So here's Jesus, his position on it. And they have some positions of, Paul, he has positions on it. Like in 1 Corinthians 7:39, the wife is bound by the law as long as her husband liveth. But if her husband be dead, she is at liberty to be married to whom she will, only to the Lord. Now, the interesting thing about Paul, and this is the only thing about Paul that I find very interesting, is that let me talk about Paul for a second for all you Christians. And I'm going to have to go into Corinthians chapter 15 to make them see this. Because when you study Paul, you really can't get no reference to where he gets some of his stuff from. It doesn't come out of the Old Testament. It doesn't 100% come from Jesus, you know, even though he said he met Jesus on the roadside, but there's no way you really can verify what the man is saying. He's saying a lot of things, and he's going to tell you why this. He said, he talks about how you are saved by what he preached. And I'm trying to find this. And I hate to have church this morning, but we got to do this because it's 1 Corinthians 15:2. He says, by this gospel you are saved if you hold firmly to the word I preach to you. Otherwise you have believed in vain. So right here, you'll see Paul, he's basically making himself into a Messiah. And this is why the Christians kind of like put Paul on a pedestal. They kind of put him on a pedestal and kind of make him above Jesus. And they do. And they have to because they're Gentiles. And Jesus didn't come to save the Gentiles. So they have to. So that's why they'll use Jesus' name, but their doctrine is rooted in a Gentile doctrine that's coming out of the 13 books of Paul. So right here you'll see this man, he said, you're saved by what I'm preaching to you. This is what you're saved. He didn't say you're saved by what Jesus said. He didn't say you're saved by what Moses said or anything like that or anything. You're saved by the things that I preach to you. So this is where, and I'm doing all this because I wanted y'all to see where this mindset is coming from. And a lot of the followers in Christianity, they don't know where it is because they're not really versed in Scripture either. So they don't really understand it. A lot of them don't even know that they're following a man named Paul. They just reference it without really understanding who these epistles are directed to and what was their purpose and intent. They just kind of like just blindly just go about and just do it. So I wanted to put that out there first because you're going to see that Paul has a lot of things on marriage when he talks about this, and then he starts talking about the law and how you're free from the law. So that is what we had to deal with. So the only way that I could, because the Christians obviously going to have their own opinions about law. You know, they don't think they're under the law of Moses, and you got a lot of Moors out there who think that the law of Moses or the Bible itself is some sort of a concoction of the white man and things like that. So you have to contend with all of these different views of this. And I try to reconcile that. And I think the only great reconciler is natural law. Natural law. So you have to be able to see, okay, does this have any basis in natural law and what we're discussing and everything? That's how I look at everything. I don't look at it just as, okay, well, this man just said, even if Jesus said something, I'm looking at what he's saying. In the New Testament, I'll say, okay, Jesus just said this. Okay, does this have any basis in natural law or what would be called God's law? Because God is the one, he's the author of the laws of nature and so forth, or the creator, not the anthropomorphic representation of God. I'm talking about God, the all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-present creator of the boundless universe. Okay? So, in looking at this, let's go back to another. In Mark 10:11, it says, and he said, whoever shall put away his wife and marry another committeth adultery against her. And if a woman shall put away her husband and shall be married to another, she committeth adultery. So right here we have in Mark, you know, because we got some kind of differences in Mark and Matthew, because in Matthew it just gives you the impression if the woman does it, then it's a sin. And then Mark kind of reconciles that a little bit because it puts it both on the man and the woman, which I do think it is appropriate for that. It says, now, does that have any basis in natural law? When you have this union with an individual and everything, and then you sever that union, what kind, or is it even possible to truly sever it? You know, that would be a question too. You know, can you really sever the union? There was this Rosicrucian who wrote a book. It's the only thing that I've seen so far that kind of really addresses the esoteric aspects of this. And you can write down the name of this book. It's called The Science of Love. This book is no longer in print, so you're going to have a difficult time finding it. I had a difficult time finding it. Every time I give it to somebody, they never give it back. Every time I give somebody this book, they never give it back. So I had to go You know, then finally I said, well, it's okay, I'll buy another one. And then I just found that he took it out of print. So I can't give nobody else this book. But this book is dealing with the science, and it's dealing with that. It addresses love on a scientific basis, because a lot of people, they have this impression of love, which I think is a mistake also. How they think that love is some sort of feeling that somebody's, the overwhelming feeling that they get about another person. And I don't think that's an accurate definition of love. I think love encompasses so much more than just how you just is a strong emotional urge that you have for another individual. I think there is a spiritual, physical, and mental significance when we talk about this thing called love. I think the word love has been one of the most abused words that has gone out there, and the most misunderstood words that we have in the English vocabulary. But in this particular book, it addressed some things about women. And I'm going to read some of this to you. Let's see. And I'm going to read this. And I'm going to start right here. Okay. And it's called The Mystery of the Feminine Soul. The Mystery of the Feminine Soul. The Mystery of the Feminine Soul. It says, the ancient symbol of the Sphinx signifies caution and secrecy. Therefore, prudence dictates how much of the hermetic secret of love can be revealed. It would not be appropriate to display Isis naked before those who do not value her. One may only catch a glimpse of her eternal and immortal beauty, the goal pursued by eternal lovers of truth, philosophers of all time. Though her mantle be thin, Isis must remain veiled. Hermeticism's task is to lighten Isis' veil. In order to see her face to face, one must be a true hermeticist, having passed through the arduous, painful, and lengthy test nature demands of those who seek the naked truth. From now on, we invoke the hidden guardians of the secrets of nature to blind the sight of those who are unworthy, so they may remain unaware of the essential knowledge transmitted in this book. They may only attain the empty and programmed understanding of the word and not the deeper living meaning. The great symbols of universal duality are always found in relation to the human being. Hermetic tradition sustains that God does not exist beyond man. This cryptic statement does not negate a higher being, but on the contrary, it gives him a more rational and concrete existence, an existence no less mystic on account of this relation to the human being. I remember one time Dr. Malachi Z. York said something very profound that you have to meditate on. He said, would God exist if you didn't exist? And that's something that you have to meditate on. You have to think about that. Would God exist if I didn't exist? The quick answer would be yes, of course. Meditate on that. Marinate on that a little while. To go fully into the subject, it must be noted that everything in the universe exists in pairs. Masculine and feminine, active and passive, light and darkness, life and death. And of course, one of the 7 principles is polarity. There are 2 sides to everything. That's why we have a public and a private. Public and private is rooted in natural law. It just doesn't make sense for anybody to argue that point once you understand the laws of nature. Accordingly, the egg is a symbol of woman, who is the passive conceiver of nature, and the sperm is the symbol of man, who is the active principle of nature. Male and female are only halves of a whole, contrarily similar but not equal. As the Bible says, God created Adam from dust, but Eve was not born in the same way because she was made from one of Adam's ribs, taken out while he slept. In this simple and symbolic tale, part of woman's mystery is hidden, for it may be inferred that man and woman were created in different ways. In some way, Eve came from Adam himself. In this respect, the Bible certainly does not refer to her corporal existence, but rather to that of her soul. There have often been arguments about whether a woman has a soul or not, and great thinkers such as St. Augustine had serious doubts about this issue. Hermetic tradition, whose wisdom has existed since the times of Atlantis and Lemuria, Hold that great mystery is hidden behind the dilemma, and we shall try to unveil it in a little. The significant secret is the fact that there is a transcendental difference between a virgin and a woman who has already had her first sexual relationship. This disparity is so great that the virgin, in fact, lacks a soul and acquires it from the first man who possesses her sexually and breaks her hymen. Before this event, the virgin has only a collective soul, not an individual one. She possesses a soul in common with all virgins, which is really the soul of nature embodied in her. And this is something real interesting. They did this movie, what is this movie? It's a Roman movie. I forgot the name of it, where the gods were, this man, they were fighting. And the thing is that these oracles, and these oracles were virgins, and the oracle lost her ability to be an oracle. They had to be virgins, and they would lose their ability once they had sex. And you find that they're always looking for a virgin to sacrifice. They're looking for a virgin who can, be used as some sort of oracle in some sense. A lot of esoteric books, they're looking for young female virgins to do certain type of, processes and things of that nature. It's real interesting once you start paying attention to it. You'll see it. But it goes on, it says, now, this virgin is the embodiment of nature. All right, she's pure. She hasn't been defiled by any man or anything like that. So she still has this connection with nature. It says the hymen is nature's seal. It is the protection which nature has placed in her living temple, the woman. When the seal is broken through sexual initiation, life is given a force which will remain alive in her forever. And that is her human soul. At first, she has only a primitive soul formed from nature's elemental substance. A woman's soul will be of a higher or lesser nature, given either her happiness or grief in life, depending on the quality of her first sexual union, because this event, to a large extent, determines her future destiny. It depends mainly on the level of evolution of her initiator and on the state of consciousness he experiences during coitus and on the delicacy or roughness of his advances. If a man possesses an inferior and passional nature with his psychological center of gravity in his stomach and testicles, or if he is passive and feminine or complex ridden, a woman will most certainly receive a tremendously negative force which will lead her to an unhappy, ill-fated existence. And one thing that they get about in this book is talking about feminine men, effeminate men. And effeminate men come in different degrees. Not all effeminate men show a homosexual type tendency. Not all effeminate men are homosexual. This is why there's so many women that act masculine, because there's so many men that are demonstrating different degrees of some type of effeminate type of disposition. Ass kissers and shit like that. Not warriors. But it goes on. So it's talking about you women out there who would have your first sexual experience because you don't know how to identify effeminate characteristics in a man, unless he's a flaming faggot or something like that. But if he's not doing that, you don't recognize the feminine characteristics. This is why women have trouble with real men when they encounter a real man. And they want to go to task with them because they've been dealing with effeminate men the whole time who demonstrate feminine characteristics. And when you run into a real man who demonstrates masculine characteristics, you've been playing the man for so long, you don't know how to deal with him. So I can't necessarily blame the women for that. A large part of that is shouldered by the men out there who don't know how to be men. Somebody told me, isn't it old-fashioned for you to be talking about men should take care of women? I said, the laws of nature don't respect time. It don't change. I said, maybe that'll change when men can start having babies. But right now, as long as I've been seeing, I ain't seen a man yet lay up on a bed and pass a child through between his legs. I ain't seen it yet. So nature has dictated certain things to you and has dictated certain things to me. So it goes on, it says, in the course of her life, if she has sexual relationships with other men, she will not basically modify her original soul. She will only add new elements to it, which are additions to the main nucleus of what she received at her initiation. So these women who are having sex with different men, okay, you did not distort your initial, the first person that you had sex with, you retain that forever, and you are adding on top of that with each new additional experience that you're having, because women are containers and they take on this energy from the different men that they are with. And this is and we're getting into the science of this, okay? It goes on, it says, as an example, if the first man was coarse, immoral, or depraved, and the second was a true saint, the influence of the second man will not be enough to wipe out the stamp of the former, which will be kept forever as the main element of the soul. Sexual initiation is really the most crucial and decisive experience for a woman because it determines her happiness or unhappiness, her elevation or debasement. In addition, she will continue to be psychologically united to her initiator, even though she may never see him physically again. It cannot be otherwise, for she received her soul from him just as the man received his from God. The virgin initiated by a man of higher development who is consciously aware, positive, intelligent, and balanced will be receptive to all the elements needed to achieve a happy and prosperous life apart from her own spiritual elevation. It will surely be argued that this is a great injustice because a woman is thus branded by her sexual initiation, and should this experience be negative, it will prevent her future happiness. The intrinsic character of nature is immoral, beyond good and evil. And this is something that I'm always telling people, there's no such thing as good and evil. Nature does not identify good and evil or good and bad. That is a human concept. Nature is beyond good and bad. Nature just is. The intrinsic character of nature is immoral, beyond good and evil, and it's basically indifferent to morality or immorality because it is above these concepts. Nish defined his own philosophy as a moralism and said that the Superman could not keep to the conventional norms of morality. And this is why you see a lot of people, and this is why I'm always looking at the Illuminati or and this is why you'll see a lot of people, they'll judge Jay-Z and all these people, and they say they were with the Illuminati or they did in Satanism and things like this. And when you really get into the sciences of all these things, it's like what they're striving to be is beyond good and evil because they're privy to this information. The religious individual deals in concepts of good and evil, God and the devil. And that's why Reverend Ike, he came out and he said the devil is the mind and misunderstanding of God. How can there be two powers? There can only be one. Let that marinate on you for a while. But it goes over, it says, moreover, human ethics only represent the norms of behavior considered acceptable to a certain society at a given historical moment. Nature is infinite and eternal, beyond good and evil, and keeps only to the fulfillment of the rules of the game set by the Creator. What that means is it sticks to the laws, the immutable laws. People suffer when they violate these rules. You suffer when you violate the law, natural laws. The most serious problem is that human beings have deviated from the path of spiritual evolution and have replaced it with a frenzied search for pleasure and sensual comfort, which has made them forget the rules of the game, if ever they knew them. Such rules do not belong to the cultural records of humanity and can only be discovered through motivation, effort, and personal desire, which is what high-frequency radio is all about, because most people never even knew the rules. All right? Regardless of the individual quality of a woman, The positive or negative influence of the male who first possesses her will prevail in her sexual initiation. The validity of this statement, whether it be fair or unfair, can be tested simply by personal observation. So this is all we have to do. And this is what I say about the law. I say you can argue about the law. We don't have to follow that. But look at society. Look how morally debased society is today because of this because there aren't any that people aren't forced to strictly adhere to the laws. Look at how debased society has become. It's almost like the Creator is saying, okay, I'm going to allow you to see what happens when you don't follow law. You're going to suffer. And this is what all the great prophets were saying. If you go and read, if you're a Christian, you go read any of the prophets, they always use this word law, even in the New Testament. That when you violate the laws, you suffer. It goes on, it says, the validity of this statement, whether it be fair or unfair, can be tested simply by personal observation. Grave danger is involved in a woman's first sexual contact because at this moment she is born into existence as a human soul and abandons her elemental realm. Okay, because when you're looking at a woman, you're looking at a product of nature. This is why they call the woman God. Okay? They call it, like, you got a lot of people who don't have a very good firm understanding of this. They say the woman is God. She is the embodiment of nature. This is why they call nature. You know, people always get, why you always refer to God as a man? Well, why do you always refer to Mother Nature as a woman? Why she always got to be a woman? Why can't nature be a man? You know what I'm saying? God, you know, and really what you're talking about is you're talking about concepts of masculine and feminine. When you say Father God and Mother Nature, you're talking about two aspects of the feminine and masculine, the active and passive principles. This is why you always see in every book, God is always speaking something into existence, and nature is receiving it and manifesting it. So when you're looking at a virgin or you're looking at a woman, you're looking at the embodiment of nature, which is why she should be respected and she should be elevated. And this is why virginity was held in such high esteem. It has fallen out of that because people today are woefully ignorant. They just want to bust her cherry. And the women are woefully ignorant of it as well. They just want to have a first experience or get it over with so you can start having sex. And the mothers aren't teaching the women the value of this, and neither are the fathers, teaching their sons how to value a woman in her first sexual experience. Let's go on. It says, her vestigial elemental soul, which is without any individuality. And why is it without any individuality? Because she's a part of the all. This is why they can be oracles and things of this nature, because they are in tune with the all. And it goes on, it says, her vestigial elemental soul, which is without any individuality, does not perish, however, but is molded and adapted to the vibratory energetic schema given by the man. So this elemental quality, her connection with the universe does not cease because she has sex with her first man. However, it is modified by this particular individual. It goes on, if the man is, for example, a pessimistic type, the woman's elemental soul is stamped with the impression just as clearly as a photograph is developed from a negative. What happens to a woman after her first sexual experience? How does she handle her relationships with the male sex in general? These questions lead us to other mysteries of nature, such as the concept which symbolizes woman as the egg. Like the earth, she conceives all the seeds which penetrate her, whether they are good or bad, positive or negative. So when you're looking at a woman, she is fertile soil. It says this in the Quran too. And whatever seed is implanted in her, that is what is going to manifest. And that is physical, spiritual, and mental. So when you're thinking about a woman and you're planning something in her, this is what's going to manifest because she's a manifester. all right, which is why you need a woman. Behind every successful man is a woman, because this woman is a determining factor in a man's success or failure as well. A big determining factor, which is one of the reasons why they're going to talk about why virgins were so cherished, because it wasn't so much the fact that they was a virgin, it was the fact that a man knew he was getting like a clean slate, and this woman hasn't been defiled, and he knows what energy, he's not taking on some energy from some other man that could end up being detrimental to him. This is why wealthy people stay within their own circles, because they are taking on the energy of other wealthy people who have been trained and who share the same vibratory frequency that they do. They even had whorehouses like that. They had whorehouses developed where only wealthy men were allowed to frequent. But it goes on. It says, Mother Earth does not distinguish between poisonous and wholesome plants. She lets them both grow. Likewise, a woman is a true egg or magnetic uterus, which conceives all the seeds which penetrate her and which come from the active irradiation of a man. This is a great problem for the huntress of magnetism, because she receives indiscriminately so many different types of vibrations that she loses her psychological identity completely. And this is why we're talking about women who are vampires. All right? You got women out there who are actively out there, we might call them whores or whatever, but they are aggressively seeking male energy. And they don't necessarily have to touch a man to get it. This is why they dress seductively, because just giving our attention and looking over her, she can steal our energy. She can walk into a room of men and take all the masculine energy out of her. And that's why she'll be attracted to you if you don't pay her any attention, because you're not giving her any energy. It goes on, it says, this is a great problem. You know, you got these hundreds. These vibrations are incorporated into her soul, generating varied and complex emotional and psychological states. This is why we call an ass crazy. Because in these vampiric women who want all of this masculine energy, this male energy and everything, are taking on so many different forms of energy indiscriminately. And some of them are discriminate. You know, like you got gold diggers who only deal with wealthy men. And in a way, they're kind of right. I hate to say that, but it's true. I mean, it's kind of right. They're only looking for one type of energy. But you got some women out there who are indiscriminate in the energy that they take on. And this leaves them what you would call crazy. They're having different spirits. This was the definition of possession. The definition of possession is when you have a lot of spirits in you. This is why anytime you look in the Bible, they would, when a lunatic would come to buy Jesus, he took spirits out of them, cast out the spirits. But today they try to treat it with, like drugs and so forth. It goes on, it says, the soul of a woman who lost her virginity is made up of 3 levels. Number 1, the elemental or collective level, nature's original soul. The human soul received from the first man, and then the psychosexual vibratory emanations received by the masculine sex in general. So women, when you're dealing with a woman who is a receiver, who is passive, because that is the nature of the feminine part of nature, is passive, receives energy. She can receive it either discriminately or indiscriminately from varied sources, either from physical contact or non-physical contact. A woman can be visualized as a container or a bowl. Imagine her as a bowl itself and the contents as the soul she was given by the first man in her life. Now imagine that the bowl has 2 different levels. The first, which corresponds to the soul received, is sealed and therefore watertight in the bottom part. However, there is a second level above this, open to the reception of new or future forces. This second level is protected by a magnetic circle or ovoid, and is comprised of energies which, although powerfully influence the woman, do not modify her primordial content, but instead make her the bearer of ill-fated or fortuitous vibrations and events. All right, so a woman in your life, what's going to dictate how your life is, let me see if I can put this in layman's terms, is the type of men that you deal with. So what has to be taught And this is why am I preferencing everything that I'm talking about today when I go back to the Bible? Because when you look at the Bible, this part of it is not discussed in the Bible. The science behind everything, why God makes a law. God will just tell you to do something. Don't do this. Well, why, God? Look, don't worry about why. I just told you, don't do this. Don't commit adultery. Don't do this. Don't eat this kind of food. Don't do it. Well, why? You don't need to know why. I'm telling you not to do it. And this is kind of like the theme of the Bible. You're just being told something, and you're not told why. So then this will leave yourself open to somebody like a Paul who will come along and tell you you don't have to follow the law, when he's not giving you any reasons that are rooted in nature. So you don't understand the significance of why a law is very impactful, why it's very significant. Now, I'm saying this to say, when we look at, because yesterday I had the discussion with the gentleman, he's in a custody issue with his child. And I get a lot of stuff like that. I get a lot of people who want to have consultations with me about situations that deal with, domestic situations. And domestic situations, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't handle those very well. If you're seeking a consultation with me, I'm always going to resort to talking about something spiritual or something like that. Because, the way that the courts are really handling these situations obviously is not very well. They're doing the best they can in dealing with heathen type people. And these are the things that are not being spoken of. It's really heathen people who act like children, who cannot be mature adults and take the best interest of the children into consideration first and put it above their own personal, thoughts about a situation. And this is what we're dealing with when we deal with those particular situations. So for somebody to come and ask me something about, well, I'm in court, and I gave everybody 4 rules. The 4th rule is to stay out of court. Somebody asked me at the Summit of the Moors, well, how do we stay out of the court? I said, you stay out of court by honoring God. The only reason you're in court is because you violated one of these laws. That's why you're there in the first place. Told you don't get a divorce. You got a divorce. That's why you're there. It told you how to have sex. You didn't follow that. That's why you're there. That's why the man is sitting on the bench is wearing on a robe. He's supposed to be a representative of God. And this is also the reason why I, played the sister on first, because a lot of things she was saying is right. If you could just kind of like put aside her religious indoctrination that is obviously present in her discourse and kind of listen to the substance of what she was saying, you'd understand she's saying that, these are the true laws and this is where your true protection lies. And honoring the creator of the boundless universe. I say it all the time. And I came to this conclusion not from some religion, not from Christianity, not from Islam, not from, Judaism or something like that. It's from a scientific study of nature and how nature operates. It goes on. Sometimes a woman transmits these forces to those men with whom she unites sexually, transmitting positive or negative vibrations which came from the men with whom she had intercourse in the recent or distant past. This is the reason why a woman's soul is so complex and variable, and why it is so difficult for a man to understand. The truth is that she herself feels sudden impulses to do things which she does not really want to do, or else she experiences negative emotional states without knowing where they come from. They come from the forces which she receives in her bowl, in her magnetic uterus, and also from the men who have looked at her with desire or admiration. There are some women, and this is some of the reasons I think, like in Islam, they made women wear veils and some of the things like that. When you start going back and when you study all of this stuff, you begin to see, okay, I now understand why they're doing that. They're not trying to oppress the woman in a way to kind of try to protect her. But these Arabs over there today, they don't know none of this. You know, they're just doing something traditionally because it's a part of tradition and part of their religion. They don't understand the science behind it. But it goes on, it says, there are some women whose contents may have become contaminated and corrupt through the fault of certain men, to the extent that those men change the woman's true nature into garbage containers. There are still others who contain only positive forces. These situations does not depend on what is received, but mainly on what is accepted or allowed to enter. The magnetic ovoid of a woman's soul, which is the protective lid to the bowl, is only open when something intimate in her feels attracted to the force trying to penetrate her. All right? So if she's attracted to you, she'll open herself up to you. And this is another reason, women, I hope you're listening, why men, once they find out that you slept with another man, it's over with. It's not really, it's something just intuitively in us that, you know, you've allowed another man to dominate you or enter you or penetrate you or put his spirit inside of you. It's like, that's why it's kind of like, you know, over. You know, and it gets into that a little bit too, but it goes on, it says, in this way she either accepts or rejects this force depending on her degree of inner evolution, spiritual elevation, and psychological equilibrium. A woman may be pure at the age of 60, even after having lived through many experiences, or alternatively, she may be contaminated and perverse at the age of 14. It is the force of her spiritual quality, her inner ancestry, which can save her from a negative initial sexual union. So can you be saved from an initial negative sexual union? Yes. Even though she may be young and inexperienced. This quality is a mixture of what she has inherited from her parents, her education, her own effort, sense of responsibility, and personal concern. Truly intelligent people will understand that the feminine sex is the bearer of the karma of humanity, that it is the bearer of the causes which later, when they are transmitted to men, will show themselves in concrete effects. A woman mentalizes the man in her brain, and she carries out everything that she transmits to him from the contents of her bowl. A destiny of the world is not in the hands of men, but is truly in the hands of women. There is only one way to better the spiritual and human condition of Homo sapiens, and that is by recognizing and giving back to women the place which really belongs to them as the mothers of the world. To be worthy of this dignity, however, women must first free themselves of the chains of men's macho behavior, which is but the expression of men's spiritual and virile impotence. Women must achieve equality with them and shoulder their responsibility as conceivers of a better world. This is true higher maternity and is a different option to the procreation of flesh and blood children. Women's power to conceive has been castrated by the codes of behavior which society imposes on them, by the rigid, hypocritical morals which oblige them to constantly and erotically repress their libido as if sublimation was not an option. In other words, you can, transmute your sexual energy into other avenues. Morals need urgent reinforcing, not in a repressive way, but in a way that comes from an individual's inner awareness in response to what is inappropriate, by terminating all hypocritical moral norms which make lying and deceit necessary, and by replacing them with a greater openness and clarity in people's lives. And this is, I have some people, some homeboys, they kind of live this life. They kind of like, but if she wants to have sex with somebody, all she needs to do is just let me know. I'm good for it. I was kind of thinking about that. I was like, this is just kind of like a version of that. You got these open relationships, and these people seem to be happier with it because, I even thought of that myself. I said, do you really, really think your woman only wants to have sex with one man for the rest of her life? Are we repressing her libido or something? And, it was this Arab guy. This is what he told me. He said, well, the reason your women want to have sex with different men is because they've experienced different penises and everything. They can compare and contrast penises and different things. But when they've only had sex with one man, they don't have anything to compare with. And my retort to that was, well, isn't she always going to be curious? Isn't she always going to be curious about it? You know what I'm saying? So, are we, is it repressive? He's like, okay, well, is it really, is that really, realistic to really think, this woman, are we, just like men want to experience their full sexuality, don't women kind of want to do this too? And if they're going to do this, and not to say that it's right or wrong to do this, but should it be done with full knowledge of the effects of what you're engaging in? Because obviously when we look at the state of the world today, everybody's been operating in abject ignorance, because all you got to do is just look around and see how our relationships are going today. So I think that's beyond any type of argument that we don't know the rules to the game as it relates to, the science of mating and so forth. But let's go back and let's look at this. It says, morals need urgent, it goes on, it says, it seems that certain insidious currents exist that have a vested interest in keeping women in an inferior position at all costs without giving them the chance to rise to the same level as men in their intellectual training, individual liberties, and responsibilities. There seems to be a special wish to keep women subjugated and thus to prevent any chances of creating a better world. There are groups which would no doubt be harmed in a world with less selfishness, more spirituality, and more fraternity. It is commonly thought that it is the men who rule in life. On the contrary, though, a man carries out a woman's mental orders because she causes him to conceive with her masculine brain. She plays his game, though, and helps to keep up the illusion that it is he who has the power. But things have gone so far that the right hand no longer knows what the left hand is doing. A woman has become so divided into two clearly defined halves that she herself does not know which half she belongs to. The half that submits to the male or who obeys him, which is the outward appearance, or the inner half who, out of a desire for rebellion and sensitivity, dominates a man without him realizing it. Simultaneously, she keeps up an appearance of obeying him. One has to wonder if a man's decisions are his own or if they are born of the female brain. Based on this scenario, it is questionable if a man's decisions are his own or if they are born in the female's brain. A major concern is the need to end the fiction of male superiority and for men to drop their chauvinistic attitudes. Women must abandon their fiend condition of defenselessness, adolescence. If women really have the same rights as men and are educated to truly develop their intelligence fully and diverse skills and not just their biological ability to bear children, there will be a chance to instruct them in the correct use of their mental and conceiving powers so that they may thus assume their role as creators of a better world. Otherwise, trapped in the roles of female bearers of children, women will always be kept from the higher works of the spirit and intelligence. It is understandable that if women are educated as a type of wet nurse, their first concern will be marriage, since they are educated to have children. For this same reason, they have neither the opportunity nor the wish to develop themselves into other fields of human endeavor, which would considerably widen their inner world. Women's capacity to conceive has been diminished to mere procreation, and they are also kept ignorant of the fact that they can fulfill themselves through a wide range of possibilities which go far beyond what a profession or artistic skill can offer. Of course, there are many women who have not chosen the role of motherhood and who have become outstanding professionals, artists, or leaders of various causes. However, an equal or greater danger exists for the intellectual woman, more so than that of the mere conceiver of children. The danger is the gradual distancing and eventual withdrawal of her own femininity as she is driven by the urge to compete with the masculine sex on equal ground. One can observe a great percentage of women who have a highly developed intelligence who have allowed their femininity to atrophy because they do not know how to maintain their inner equilibrium. To illustrate this problem, there are two contrasting types of women, the instinctive or uterine woman, and two, the intellectual woman. And it gets into a discussion about women who use their beauty their entire life to get what they want, and then women who are forced to use their intelligence because they don't possess the beauty that these women over here possess. You got women who their entire life, all they're going to do, they walk around, they wear tight stuff all the time. They're in a constant mode of utilizing their physical appearance to influence and to manipulate, circumstances to their advantage. And then there's the intellectual type of woman who uses her mind. And so it goes when it says, an instinctive woman is one whose motivational center of gravity is not in her brain, but in her womb. and capable of intelligently analyzing diverse situations, she reacts passionately like an animal. She is a slave to her instinctive impulses. The intellectual woman, on the contrary, analyzes everything and shapes her behavior accordingly because her thoughts are more powerful than her inferior impulses. She may, however, often react to people and situations in an insensitive and unfeminine way. This is what we're dealing with, men. There's a third type, which may be called a balanced woman, who consciously uses her heart to strike a balance between her instinct, her emotion, and her intellect. Her esoteric symbol is the number 8, which denotes that the intellectual and instinctive currents cross and regulate each other in the middle in her heart. The balanced woman is not at all uninterested in maternity, because if she wishes to be a mother, she simply does so freely as one of her means of self-fulfillment. If she does not wish to, she will focus her power to conceive in the world of philosophy, art, and science, education, and other areas of expression. Correct development of emotional sensitivity, self-control, and dominion are what allow a woman to become an integral being who is transcend the instinctive forces of nature which circulate in her interior. It is of extreme importance to understand that a woman is the primordial cause of a family's happiness or misfortune, as well as that of different countries and of the world at large. She protects her emotional states through her own brain, from which she fertilizes a man's brain in a positive or negative way, depending on the quality of the vital and imaginative states in herself. The type of woman already referred to, who always puts economic interest before love, has an inner life of very low vibration and ruled exclusively by animal selfishness. That's your materialistic women. She also makes a man conceive selfish thoughts, materialistic behavior, insensitivity, harshness, and inhumanity, thus laying one more brick in the building of a selfish, violent, and corrupt humanity. Women do not realize that because they are like the earth. Whatever they conceive or project will also return to them. In fact, the individual thoughts are fertilized by the inferior thoughts of a woman. Will inevitably turn against her in due time with the same selfishness and lack of love he received. A woman makes a man conceive, but receives something equivalent from him in return. This is the reason why women who sell their bodies to one or several men must in exchange pay the price of being considered an object or a thing, which can easily be discarded or replaced. When you sell yourself, you become a thing. When you sell yourself for money, don't get mad because you got with a guy with some money and he got several other women. I bought you. You can be replaced. If that's what you want, you get what you asked for. You got the money. These are the women you see bouncing. They're very, very attractive. They bounce every time you see them. They with a different man. They ain't because they get with them. There's no substance there. So once you get with them, there ain't any substance. You have to move on. But it goes on. It says, on the contrary, a woman who gives love to the man worthy of it will always be loved in return. The exception to the rule is the woman who gives herself to a man of a low human quality, who will trap her in the sensual world of inferior passions without giving her love of any kind whatsoever. Attentive readers who know how to read between the lines and go beyond simple literal interpretation will discover in these explanations profound mysteries of human existence. They will grasp the secret of happiness and love unless they have closed or inflexible minds or are caught up in strict religious or cultural programming. In this case, they will understand nothing at all. Those who blindly discount everything they cannot understand will not comprehend what this work intends. As with all our other works in this series, this book may be a door for some leading to something of supreme value, or else a threshold to nothing. And I wanted just to share that with you as a preference to talking about the laws, because if the laws are in place, there has to be a reason why the law is in place. If there is a reason why, in the Bible, it tells you, well, if you rape a virgin, I'm going to kill your ass, all right, because that's what would happen if you raped a virgin. That was death, okay? There was a reason for it. because you're bringing in a demon into, the fold. You're creating something that's going to have an effect over the entire community. Okay, and this is what this is all about. So my message to you today, because I'm gonna open up the phone lines in just a little bit, because I said I was gonna open the phone lines earlier today, is that when we talk about these laws, these positive laws, and y'all looking for remedies, all right, it's really no remedy in anything physical. Now, let me change that. There isn't a remedy in anything physical. The only remedy that you have is spiritual, because the spiritual is the causal plane. Now, I know a lot of times y'all listen to me talk and everything, y'all probably get tired of hearing me talking about that, because a lot of people want to come on, they want to talk about how to follow UCC 1, how to do a non-UCC, how do I put together a promissory note. I know how to do all that shit backwards and in my sleep. And I'm sitting here telling you, it ain't about that. I can go in court. I can dialogue. I know the little tricks of the judge. I know how to handle myself in court. I don't have no appearance of fear at all when I'm in court. I'm not afraid. I might be nervous before I go in, but once I start talking, all that leaves me. And I can sit there and handle myself in court. I know how to do all of that. And I can tell you right now, I can tell you unequivocally, that at the end of the day, your saving grace is going to be how spiritually grounded you are. And what's going to determine whether or not you're grounded is how your knowledge and your application of the laws of nature in general. And that goes with everything. The reason we're having so many problems, as a people and everything, is, first of all, we don't have no family. Our family structure has been torn asunder. And there has to be some sort of scientific application that we're going to have to put into effect to address the ills of our society and the ills of our people in general. Most people do not know the things I just talked about just then. They don't understand that. They're not telling their teenage daughters that you need to be very select. This is the reason why families chose husbands for their children, or they had arranged marriages and things like this, because it was something that just a little more than, I just like, X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. What is the blood type of the individual that you're choosing to have children with? Is that going to be a match? These are some of the things that we have to consider. I'm going to end this by reading, so I'm not going to go deep into this, whatever, I'm going to end it by saying, reading this, what Jesus said about marriage again, and I'm going to go to the phone line. And it's in Matthew chapter 19 and verse 3. The Pharisees came to him, testing him, saying, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason? Which is what goes on today. They'll put in a marriage divorce decree, irreconcilable differences. What the fuck is that? Irreconcilable differences. Any reason. Is it lawful for a man? And what you're going to notice is this too. This is what I noticed. And Christians don't notice this. They don't notice it. I noticed that the Jews are constantly showing the world how the Christians are heathens. Because the Jews really run the laws and the banking and all this kind of stuff, and television and everything like that. So what they do, and they do it in a way where the Christians don't know what they're doing, but they're doing it in a way they're constantly showing the world, look at these heathens. They do it in everything. Everything that I see, I notice and say, look at they showing what heathens that they are. They're heathens. They're animals. These are animals. They ain't gonna never run nothing, and that's why they're not in control of anything, because they don't honor the laws. But it goes on, it says, the Pharisees also came to him, testing him, saying to him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason? And he answered and said to them, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Now you can understand what it's talking about, one flesh. This is not just some sort of, just words they put in here. There's something actually esoteric that occurred when a man has sex with a woman that causes them to be one flesh. This is what you won't get in the Christian church. They say, well, y'all join together, y'all one. Well, why are we one flesh? Break it down for me, Reverend. Give me the science behind it. How did we become one damn flesh? Once you start exploring that, now you can understand the cause and effect behind situations, and now you can govern yourself accordingly. But you can't do that shit when somebody's just giving you some loose interpretation of something. It's like, don't explain it or anything. They just read it to you. It goes on, it says, so then, they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. And they said, they said to him, why didn't Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and put her away? He said to them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts. Because that's what you read in Deuteronomy. They didn't like the woman, or something like that. He said, permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, this is what I'm saying. Forget Moses, forget Paul. I'm going to tell you what it is. This is what I'm saying. I'm telling you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. Now, I don't know if that applies to you if you are not a Christian, because I'm not a Christian, what I'm saying? So I know this book and everything, but I don't call myself a Christian. I just know the laws and everything. I do comparative religious study and things of that nature. However, when I look and see into that, caused me to, okay, how does that apply in nature? Why did he say that? What is the science behind mating? That when you come and marry a woman, what is the spiritual significance to that? And can we break that down in scientific terms where the layman can understand it? So now we got something to measure cause and effect against. I'm going to open up the phone lines now. That was my message this morning. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm not restricting you to just this topic or whatever, because I said I was going to open up the phone lines. But I have felt a need to share this message with you this morning. Sister L has approached me, and she wants to do a family show on Saturdays, devoted to family and talking about these issues and things like that. We want to just break off and have an entire show that is dedicated to it, because these topics are things that have to be discussed. The laws of marriage, the science of mating. There's a science, how to select a mate, things of this nature. We have to get back into some of these things that culture is built upon. Culture is built upon a science and an accurate knowledge of how nature operates. Let me go to the phone lines real quick. Because I was going to go to, I said, you broke your word, you didn't go straight to the phone line. But I had to do that this morning. I had to. Phone lines are open. I'm going to start in area code 706-2970. 706 area code.
What's going on?
What's happening, man? What's happening? What's going on?
Merry Christmas, man. I appreciate you opening it up like that, man. Just keep opening it up like you're doing, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, man.
I appreciate it, God. I appreciate it. Hey, did you get something from it, though? That's all I want to know.
Yeah,
did you get something from it? Did it spark something?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I want to know, brother. That's all I want to know. If somebody got something from it.
Yeah, been planning. I love it, man. Yes, sir.
All right, man. All right. Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Check it out. How you doing with the weather, man? How you doing with the weather?
The weather?
Yeah.
You talking about here in Georgia?
Yeah.
Because right now it's like it's going to be a tornado that's going to hit out here and everything. It's okay, you know. It's not like Cali, you know. Cali will spoil you. One thing we can never argue about California. California got the weather, hands down. That's beyond argument. It never rains in Southern California. It is the most beautiful weather on planet Earth. Is in California. So, coming from that to here, that's not a fair question to ask me. That's not a fair question. But I love Georgia. Don't get me wrong. Georgia, the weather is needed because we're suffering, but the plants are relishing everything that's happening right now. This is why Georgia, the reason the weather has to be like this, because there's so many trees here. I remember when I first came to Georgia from Dallas, Texas. Dallas, Texas is a flat land. And, riding through Georgia, I had the impression I was riding through a forest, man. See, people who live here all the time, they don't really pay attention to the trees like that. But when you knew and you grew up like in a place that ain't had trees all your life, and you grow up and you like, man, golly, that's a damn city in the forest. You look, I'm looking at it from that point of view. So, there's a lot of trees here, man, and, they need water. So that's why the weather is the way it is. So, I'm cool with it. One thing about Georgia, it goes through all the seasons. We have beautiful falls, beautiful springs. The winter can be a little agitating, but spring, summer, and fall is beautiful in Georgia. Very beautiful. Just the winter time it just get kind of ugly. But, we have 3 out of 1. I'm cool with that. But hey, brother, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, appreciate that.
All right. Peace.
All right, peace, bro. Peace. Let me go back to the phone lines real quick. The phone lines open up. Let me dip to 501-4441. You're on High Frequency Radio. Got a question or comment?
Hey, Yusef. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm good. I just wanted to thank you for reading that excerpt that you did, because I feel like I've always felt that way, but I think as a woman, you really don't know how to vocalize it. And I can say that, I have had some of those traumatic experiences, but I can say that when you do get with the right man, it just makes you want to be a better woman. You don't, the insecurities go away, and those things that you're dealing with, they seem to be rectified if you get in the right type of relationship. I should say that.
I agree, but let me ask you a question. How do you know what the right man is? I mean, how do you determine what the right man is? Because a lot of these women today, their definition of the right man can be brought into question. Like a lot of guys say they don't know what a man is. Because they haven't been dealing with men. They've been dealing with children. They've been dealing with boys and things.
Right.
They've been dealing with effeminate men and things like this. So when they encounter a real man, can you handle a real man when you meet one? Are you ready to deal with that? A man who knows how to be a man, is a woman really ready to deal with a man that knows how to be a man? Are they really ready to deal with that? And they don't know how to be a woman. Go ahead.
When you're asking me, how do you know? And I can say I can only speak for myself is when I met opposition. So basically, I had a lot of masculine energy, just from working in corporate environments, always being forced to be a go-getter and all of that. So when I finally met somebody who wasn't going to deal with my masculine ways, he wasn't going to gobble up my shit or deal with my shit, and I met that opposition, at first it was hard for me, because I felt like he was, I felt like he was coming for me. But then as I accepted it, and there's some issues I had to work out with myself, it's actually become one of the best relationships I've ever been in.
Okay, now what do you mean when you accepted it? How did you define that to be? How do you define acceptance? And how did it, wait a minute, let me finish. And how did this modify your behavior, this acceptance? How did your behavior modify? What changed about you once you had this acceptance? What does that mean?
I learned how to submit, right? Because I always felt like I had to go toe-to-toe with a man, because I felt like being masculine was where the power was. I had to learn the power in the femininity, in my femininity, right? Because as women, especially as black women, you're not taught that. You're not, I was talking to a friend earlier today, and as black women, you're taught how to take care of things, but you're not taught how to be a wife. I think that's the main difference between us and other cultures is they groom their young women or young ladies to be wives. We're not taught how to be wives. We're told you need to go to school, and if you're going to be a baby mama, you're taught to be that, or you're taught that to be objectified is okay, right? So your value is placed on the way your body looks. And I can say that we're not really groomed to be wives. We're not groomed to be agreeable. Like two men, if I come into contact with a man who is a real man, one of us has to win, right? So there can only be one man in a relationship. So in my case, I had to let him be the man, or he wasn't not gonna let me not let him be the man, if that makes sense.
Yeah, when you read a real man is not going to allow himself to be dominated by masculinity of a woman. And yesterday we had this thing, because women will call in. Because here's the thing: women are gonna call in. They're gonna call in and talk about men are violent. I was in a relationship that was violent. It was domestic violence. He was whooping me and different things like that. And I'm not condoning that behavior in any kind of way. I never condone putting your hands on a woman. But as a man that has dealt with women myself, I'm 47 years old. I have a lot of. I'd like to think that I have a lot of experience in dealing with women too. I've been in volatile situations myself. I'm not trying to remove myself from those particular situations either. And what I found in my maturity and growing up is, first of all, it takes a lot of patience in dealing with a woman who demonstrates a lot of masculine characteristics. In my opinion, it's better to leave her alone. Unless you like her a lot and you can see her trying to compromise or different things like that, because you're probably going to end up in a situation where she's going to do something to you, or you're going to do something to her, you're going to react to something in some kind of way that is going to cause these white people to be involved in your personal business in some kind of way or something like that. But that's what I've noticed, and I look and examining what's going on in society today. There's a lot of men who have taken on feminine roles, and women are. It's a switch that's going on. You got men acting like women and women acting like men, and I think that is kind of like why I think some women think they can approach men in certain kind of ways. And I illustrate this point. It was a thing. I remember when I first got out, and I went to a club with some friends of mine, and we were in the club, and there were some women in there dancing together. They were all like dancing together, like about 5 of them. And they were all, and they ain't no men on the floor dancing with them. That's another thing. It's like, they go in the club now, and women and men don't dance with each other hardly anymore. I think that, that's kind of looked at as gay or something. I don't know. But people don't dance no more. But, it used to be a time where people, I was growing up, man, that's what you want to do. You want to go in and grab a woman and get on the floor and freak her and that whatever, dance, But that's not happening. So we got women in the club dancing with each other. So I'm at the bar just kind of watching it. And I pull out my camera and start videotaping. Because I'm a masculine man. I'm like, okay, look, this is women dancing. Look at this, y'all. And they see me doing this, and they get mad at me. Now, they in the public acting a certain kind of way, because they don't know the difference between public and private. They didn't put their business in the public, and they got mad and went over, and they didn't go tell a man. They went over to a woman. Okay, this woman is kind of like, it's kind of very like a dyke, basically, like a butch type woman, a very masculine, dressed like a man, short, look like a man type woman and everything. So, I'm like, I'm just kind of watching, and I'm kind of thinking, I'm looking, I'm like, why are they telling that woman, So a woman look across, at the club at me, and then frown up, give me this look like and then start coming over at me like she was finna come like over and whoop my ass. So I'm looking, I'm looking around my friends. I'm looking. I said, no, she's not finna come over here and, try to say nothing to me. I said, so I meet her in the middle of the club. I walk toward her before she said anything. I said, oh, so you're a gangster. I'm standing. I'm 6'3". I'm looking at her. I'm like, it's like, because I'm finna show you what a man is. You think you a man. I'm about to show you what a man is and everything, because you don't know. So in my mind, I'm thinking, what made her think that she could run up on a man like that in the first place? Okay, you had to be dealing. What has been your experience with men, which makes you think you can just run up on me like this? You don't even know who you're dealing with. I'm saying, it's like, because I'm not going to play no games with you. I'm going to show you, what's up. And I sent her on back across. And she and what was real interesting is that she humbled herself real quick, because I got a heavy voice and all of this, and I'm looking at her like waiting. I'm looking at her in a way like I'm waiting for you to say something so I can backhand you right here in the club. It's like, not to say I would do anything to her, but this is how I was like, posturing myself toward her. It's like, okay, okay, you gonna say something to me? Because I'm waiting to hear what you're gonna say. Because I'm gonna do what the fuck I want to do. And what's the problem? What the problem you got? And she just went back. But I'm saying that to say what really went in my mind is what is happening in society, where women are, thinking they take on this masculine role, and women think they can beat up men and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, what type of energy are men demonstrating? And it has to be, it's a lot of effeminate type stuff going on. There's a lot of feminine at different degrees and at different levels. So that's why I'm asking you, okay, you a man, okay, how does a woman know when she encounters a real man? And not to say that was an example of being a real man with that situation. I just handled that in the way that I thought I should handle it, because I said the nerve is, how you just going to walk up on me? Because she was really looking at me like she's going to come over and like whoop my ass about something. And I wasn't about to let that happen, But it was a thing where, what is it going in the minds of our women? Were they thinking like this? We had the situation up in Ohio where I know everybody saw it, where the bus driver took this woman. It was a young lady. She was on the bus. She spit on the bus driver, did all this. I know y'all saw the video. And everybody was appalled at the video because she was a young lady. She looked like she could be like in her mid-20s. And he was an older gentleman. He looked like he'd be in his 50s to 60s. And when she spit on him, then she, posted up like a dude. Like she said, I spit on you, like what you gonna do to me? And then he did the man thing and knocked out with one punch and threw out off the thing. And then everybody was saying, well, look how you treating this woman. Look how you treating this woman and everything. A man shouldn't do this and all this. And I'm like, well, look how this woman was acting. She was acting like a man. And that's what he told her. He said, if you're gonna act like a man, I'm gonna treat you like a man. And they get mad when you posture yourself and you start acting like a man, and then they treat you like a man, then you get upset. And I think that that's an underlying cause of a lot of domestic situations. That's just one, not all. But one of them is that women don't know how to be women, and men don't know how to be men.
Correct. I agree with you 100%. But don't you think that it's the way that we're being groomed as women? Because
I wasn't groomed.
I could think of.
I wasn't groomed. I grew up in a single-parent household with a woman who did the best she could do. By the time I was 16, I was trying to make a way for myself, and I was taught how to be a man by my friends. One in particular, he's listening, T, he was if I had to give anybody any kind of credit for helping me to be a man, it would be my older friend. Taught me how to pay bills, and he didn't teach me how to treat women right. but he taught me how to be responsible. He gave me, gave me examples. We looked up to him. He taught me how to be responsible, pay my bills, take care of myself. What it means to be, a man, kind of like in terms of being, taking care of yourself and things like that. But I never really got any guidance in any kind of way on how to treat a woman, how to be a husband to a woman, or anything like that. I didn't get no information on that whatsoever growing up. Nothing. Everything I got, a lot of my early education came from gangster rap. And then I had to find out You know what I'm saying? Listening to Games of Rap, gotta let a hoe be a hoe. You know, a bitch is a bitch. You know, things like that. A lot of my education came from that, and that was my thinking on a lot of things. And you can even hear it in our men, because when we would always refer to women, we would always refer to y'all as hoes. You say, hey, man, let's go get on some hoes, man. Let's go to the club, get on some of these hoes. You know, that's how we would talk. You know, we would talk a lot. And whether or not that had a psychological effect on us, I know that it does. But you have women participating in that as well, because they call themselves bitches and hoes, and do that. So I didn't receive any education from anybody. I got it. It was on my own. It came from a lot of heartache over the years and everything, and just trial and error and learning things on my own. That's where I got my education from. So I can't even say that I was taught. I was taught wrong. I wasn't taught at all. Nothing.
Well, then that's the issue. I think that's the issue on our end too, though. Like I was telling you, like we're not taught how to be wives. We're not taught. Like those Kardashian girls, their mom groomed them to pursue the kind of men that they will pursue, and how to deal with those men and how to make those men feel a certain type of way. Like I think black women only have three main lanes. It's the baby mama lane, the educated executive lane, or the video vixen / hoe stripper lane. Like those are the main three lanes. And none of those lanes contain the aspect of being a wife and knowing how to really nurture your family. Like and I could even say this for myself, like most of the time, if we do take the lane where we become the executives and we're overeducated, then we wait so late to have children, or we may not even have children at all. And the baby mamas, they're having so many kids, they confused. They can't even afford to really, raise children like they're supposed to. They're like breeders. Those are your breeders in your community. They're just breeding children. They're not raising them.
Right.
So
Right. I agree.
Those three lanes, like I feel like that's where we are, and I feel like that's because we've become so hard. That's why we're so masculine. We have so much masculine energy.
I like what you said though. Y'all been taught that masculine. Like I hear a lot of women. I've even heard women say that, I'm really a man or something, it's like that. I'm like, why would you want to be a man and everything? It's like they are forsaking their femininity or the female. It's like they discount the female energy, because the female energy, I think, has been made to look, because you use the word submissive, and probably a lot of women, that kind of like, was like a chagrin to them in a way, submissive to a man or whatever, and maybe that's not a good word to use. Submissive, but I think they look at this feminine energy as weak in some kind of way. They haven't been taught the full power of the feminine side, that it's a counterbalance to the masculine energy. It's not that one is above the other. They each serve their respective roles and everything. And I think that is a contributing factor, is that the masculine energy has been glorified so much. The way that we speak, you got women talk like us. They use our slang. They talk like us. They call themselves goddesses, but they imitate us. I find that very interesting, too. Like, you call yourself a goddess, but everything you're doing, you're copying off of me, Right. You know what I'm saying? It's like, these are the things I look at, I pay attention to. So it's like, they're not relishing in their own femininity. And I think that is a big problem. And that's why I read that today, because I think we need to get into the science of these things. And nobody touches deep enough on the science of these. They stay away from these topics. They stay away from virginity. They stay away from all of these topics and everything, because everybody is engaging in this conduct, and people have remarried and got families that are, piecemeal together from different, all this, so everybody's living like this today. So nobody's going to talk about it. Nobody's going to talk about it. But the thing that I know about nature is going to resolve any type of thing. Everything has to come back into balance. So the way that we're going right now, it can't continue, because nature is going to address it. And either we're going to change it, or nature is going to change it. When nature comes and changes it, it usually does it from some sort of catastrophe. Some sort of natural disaster has to come along and wipe it all out and clean the slate. So that's something that, we that we have to take into consideration. But, sister, I appreciate your comments. Very enlightening.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I got a brother.
I just want to say one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I say submit, I just mean to agree, to become
Right.
agreeable, to actually, take that and become one. Submission is not a bad thing. It could actually work in your favor. When we start becoming more agreeable with our men, we'll see some changes, definitely. But that's all I wanted to say. But thank you for your time.
Okay, you're welcome, sister. And I like that explanation, by the way, because you're absolutely right. I know you didn't mean just bow down to the man, do whatever you say, but I know what you mean. Be more agreeable and so forth, and try to be. And and actually on the man side too, there's like what I found out, and having a mate is that you got to listen to your woman, because your woman can intuit certain things that you can't. So a lot of times, when I look for her, when I ask her a question about something, I'm looking for that feminine energy, that feminine aspect of something, that intuitiveness that I don't possess. So, it does well for men to listen to their women too, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't think it's just, I'm the last word or something like that. It's like, women, they have certain abilities and capabilities that we have to respect as well as men. Likewise, women, we possess certain capabilities that you should respect as well. Like I said, it's a balancing act. I don't think it's someone's going to dominate the other. I think it's learning your roles and learning how to be team players. It's about being a team. But okay, sister, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. How's the weather out there in Arkansas? That's Arkansas, right?
It is. It's good. It's unseasonably warm. It's like 70 to 60, 70 degrees. We had a lot of rain and storms. So right now it's beautiful outside. Now I know it's supposed to rain. So, yeah. All
right, thank you. Every time I talk to women from Arkansas, y'all sound so intelligent and so, I'm like, wow, that's something true about them country women, huh? Country girl. That's like the ones that ain't been, Anyway, all right. Thank you, sister. Right. I appreciate it, okay? Peace. All right. All right, L, I see you hit me on the text message. I'm looking for the man. Well, I'm looking for a 734 area code. He ain't popped up, Sister L. He ain't popped up on the screen. I'm looking for him right now, 734. I'm going to bring him in. Hit number 1 on your phone if you listening right now. Hit number 1 on your phone. I'm trying to see. What she say? Oh, Sister L listening and everything. She keeps texting me and everything. Oh, say refresh. Okay, all right. Okay, hold on. Why I need to refresh? Oh, there he is. Let me bring him in right now. I ain't need to refresh. He just hit 1. Okay. Is this Brother Maji Abraham L?
Yeah, speaking, brother. Wonderful dialogue this morning. How you doing, you and the family?
I'm doing great today. I mean, in light of the fact, that is raining as a tornado hovering above Georgia today, but, and flood warnings. But I'm doing good.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. If we don't get our family straight, tornadoes, you're going to see more tornadoes all across the country and all across the world. Because at this juncture in where we are at in our existence on this plane of existence, that is one piece that we have to return to. If you look at nature and the weather and things of that nature and just everyday living, we are in a position where we have to return to the simplistic things. We got to return to the source. And I always say that the source is our family. You can't have no families because our families are the source in which we come from. It takes many entities for you to get here. It takes many master forces for you to get to this plane of existence, for you to come to this earth. And you surpass millions of other souls, millions of other living beings, if you will, that was in your father's loins. And when you got in your mother's loins, you surpassed them. And only you made it. So you made it for a reason and a purpose, but it were people, other people, that brought you through from one plane of existence to the other. So why would we get here and we not continue to build that? Why would we not continue to build family? Family is the core of who we are. It's the core of what we are. It took two for you to get here and many more, and it's going to take two and many more to sustain you. So I'm just excited and enthused by your conversation this morning and your dialogue. The young lady that you had on before me was right on point. You know, it's a lot to say that you have to do some self-reflection in our relationships, and that's what's missing, the self-reflection piece, the accountability for yourself. No one else should have to hold you accountable in your relationships. So I'm excited, brother, and I thank you. I thank you for the opportunity to come on this morning and share.
Hey, and you're welcome. And, you know, I kind of wanted to build on what you're saying about, you know, the family being the core. That's what trust law is all about. If you really think about it, the people who run the planet are families. And I had to really think about this too. And I noticed that it's like all the people who are in power have families. It's families that are in power. And it would seem to me reasonable for them to want any competition. And the best way to eliminate the competition is to make sure that our families are destroyed. One thing when I learned when I started studying trust law is that how they keep their families together is through trust, you know, family trust and so forth. And that is the glue that that kind of puts them together, and they are able to build their wealth and make it generational through these trusts. What they have us doing is they destroy our families and they make us start over every succeeding generation. It's like your children, you're not passing on anything to your children. Your children have to go out and get their own jobs, houses, and things like that. Right. And that shouldn't be. Right. That shouldn't be. That should already be provided for them. They should already be provided a house and all those little necessities that they need and everything. Because how are you going to build? They need time to build on whatever you built on. And they can't do that if they're sitting there trying to do the same thing you had to do. And that's why in the Bible it says a good man passes on an inheritance to his son.
Right.
You find all of this stuff, what it's talking about. And Damon Dash is talking about that. He said, I hustle for my last name, not my first.
Right. That's right. And, and when you look at that, see, the family, by it being the source of everything, is the source of every economy. So when you look at other cultures, children inherit wealth, as the eloquent example that you just gave. Right. But we inherit poverty, and here's why. They have insurance policies set up. They have trust funds set up. So holding each other accountable. So we argue when there's a funeral, and it's a sad thing to say, but I would just like to speak the language of the people for a second. But more often than not, we argue at a funeral. First of all, we don't have the insurance policy set up or the trust fund set up to properly bury our loved ones in an unexpected timely death. So normally we have to go out into the community, we have to go out into the family, and we have to ante up, if you will, funds to bury our loved ones, more times than not. So that creates a situation in which there's an argument at the funeral. After the funeral, there's hard, ill feelings, if you will. But when other people of other cultures, when they pass, hey, they got insurance companies and trust funds on the dog. So that if the dog passes, if Fido passes, somebody getting $20,000, $10,000.
I got a friend who has a funeral home, and I was in there. I said, what kind of casket? Oh, those are caskets for pets. I said, they got caskets for pets? Yeah, they got caskets. They got, white people don't be playing about they pets and everything. They got caskets look better than the human casket.
and they're just as costly because they understand. Yes, they understand that here's an opportunity for the family to grow. During the transition of a loved one, whether it be a pet or a human being, here's an opportunity for the family that is surviving to grow and grow to the next level. And that's what we have to understand. We have to begin to be committed to one another. We're just not committed anymore. We're committed to everything else, or many other things, I should say, that do not strengthen our families. And we won't have a strong economy until we do so. Because like you said, I mean, when you look at J.P. Morgan and Chase, for example, that was a family-owned business. When you look at Exxon, that was a family-owned business. Trump, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. And
Kennedy,
Walmart,
Bush,
and Trump,
Kennedy, Bush, Walmart, the Warburg, the Rothschilds. You know, you go on and on and on. It's families. And when you look into these families, they're kept together through trust. And the mentor that mentored me on trust said that. He said, before you put together trust, you need to put together family trust. Because there's a principle in place. How can you lead? How are you going to lead a nation and you ain't got your own home together? And anybody who knows me knows that I'm very, very, very centered at this point in my life in getting my home life together. You know, because if you're going to be a leader, you know, that has to be organized first. Everything from the interior out has to be organized before you can go out into the world and try to organize something in the world. It doesn't make any sense for a person to attempt to organize the world and then inside the house there's disorganization. So, you know, I concentrate on that, and that's what we need to work. And that trust will help you with that. When you're dealing in trust, it just makes sense to me. I understand why they all do it. You know, you have family trust, because all that stuff you were talking about when a loved one passes away and all of that, you don't have to deal with none of that stuff when you're dealing in trust, because everything is already arranged for property to be bequeathed to specific individuals who are the beneficiaries. The wealth of the family is going to be intelligently applied and distributed and invested. It's going to be invested properly too. You know what I'm saying? So it's just things like that. And this is how you build generational wealth. You know, it's the science of building generational wealth. And what we do, we don't think in terms of generations. I think we only think in terms of yearly. What am I going to do this year?
Yes.
Right. And they think, what are we going to do the next 100, 200 years?
It's a day by day thing.
Yes.
That's our thought process. But when we first came, we were not living a day to day thing. We were living a more of a generational thing. How are we going to support this generation? How is this generation going to survive? And the next generation after that. We should be planning 200 to 300 years from now. That's what trust allows you to do.
That's exactly what it allows you to do. It allows you to, you know, one of the things another thing about trust is that it made me understand the covenants that you have with the Creator. It's like you have to plan your life. Too many people do not plan their lives. They're just living their lives drifting aimlessly on the ocean of life without a sail. You have to set the sail of your life, and you have to do that, but you have to plan it. And how you plan your life is you do commit it to writing, and you structure it in a way. And that's why, because I don't know if you listen to my show or not, but my show is dedicated to public and private. And on the private, and private people get accused of being lawless. You know, that's what you'll hear people in the public say. They'll say, you're one of those sovereign citizens. You don't believe that you have to follow any kind of law. This is what you'll hear a police officer say. Someone in the public who's very ignorant, you know, about public and private. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true, that you do follow a law. You follow the law of the Creator, and that you should establish some sort of, this is what your religion, the role your religion is supposed to play, but you should establish some sort of covenant that guides your family relations with the Creator, and you should draft that and put that into trust. I mean, it's a science to all of this stuff. I'm trying to tell you, when you go and really study it, law is such a really deep subject that people really don't understand. But that is what you're doing. You are taking the laws of God and you're incorporating that into your documents, and you're governing your family by that. And if you utilize the principles that are contained in that, those principles are contained in there to help you to be a prosperous individual. Because the laws are put in place for your benefit, not your detriment. They're put in place for your benefit. It's only a detriment when you choose not to align yourself and harmonize yourself with those particular laws. That's what's going on. Right. And, you know, right now we got too many of our families, they're walking around. Our families aren't trained. Everybody's just oblivious. It's just total abject ignorance about anything. They listening to these preachers, and these preachers aren't giving them the full, you know, substance of everything that is contained in these books that they're reading. They're not letting them understand, well, they got this grace doctrine going on. What does that really mean? Who does that really apply to? Who is Paul talking to in the Bible? You know, who are you as a people? You know, I'm talking to the Christians right now. You know, just who are you? Are you a Gentile? Are you a Goyim? Is that what you call it? That's what you think you are? You know,
right.
You know,
are
these
you
are things
Hebrew?
like that.
Are you Israel? What are you?
People don't know who they are. They don't know. So that's another issue that we're dealing with because we don't know the laws that apply to us as a people. But I'm here to tell you that the laws that apply to us as people are the universal laws of the Creator, and those laws came from us. And we divine that from our observation of nature. That's where you divine that from an observation of nature. This is where you find God. You find God in nature. That's the only place you can divine him from. In nature, in all of its different aspects. But hey, brother, I'm going to leave your mic open. Hey, Brother Sharif, you on the line with me, brother? Because I opened up your mic. I know you got something you want to say. Go ahead and say it.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. What's going on? What's
all right. Peace, family. Everybody on the line today. Peace to the guys. All right. Hey. So, Yusef, you know, I'm listening to the show, man. Peace to the sister that just came on, peace to the brother that just came on, because those are only two people I heard. And, man, I listen to our people, and I hear so many things, man. But I never hear anybody address the issue, the cause. And even right now, you know, the brother saying, we got to do this, we got to do that. Hey, Yusef, I'm going to ask you a couple questions real quick, man. Most of us on this line have went through a public general welfare education that was instituted by a gentleman named John D. Rockefeller. Would you agree with that?
I'd agree with that in substance. Yeah, it was put in. Public education was put in place to facilitate the Industrial Revolution. You know, the advent of the Industrial Revolution, and that's where the curriculum is really, you know, directed toward. You know, it's kind of like a vestige from that era, and John D. Rockefeller did play an important role in that. So I would say yes.
Okay. The reason why I say it is because we were trained a certain way. We were trained as animals to go into some factory and do what we call life, to work, to support your family, to do all these things. He's a European. We're not a European, so we don't think European. The education system that we were brought up in taught us aspects that are not our people. They didn't teach us natural law in school. So when I hear people come to the table with these ideas, they are awesome. The ideas are good. They would work. But when you say our people don't know how to work together, you're right. They haven't been trained. They haven't been taught to think. And if you don't know how to think, I ain't coming together with none of y'all because y'all don't know how to think. And it's sad because our people just can't even come to that realization. Man, I don't know how to think. I remember when I came to the realization on how to read. You know what I mean? We have to come to these realizations so we can say, well, where do I go to learn how to think like a real African to get back to who I am so I can know how to think? And you know, that's why we're big on the private community thing right now, because I just don't see people knowing how to think to get out of these problems. You know, how can you think 300 years advance? Man, you ain't even been taught to think 5 years in advance. Man, don't teach nobody no 5-year plan, 10-year plan. How the hell you going to think 200 years out? He said that like it sounded easy, or something we can do. You can do it if you knew how to think. You know what I think? That's the only problem.
I think the foundational thing with learning how to think is the first thing that you have to understand is that the God force operates from the inside out, not the outside in. I think that is the fundamental thing that the organized religions have done to kind of like, you know, hamstring people. Like it says in Luke 17:21, the kingdom of God is within you. Okay, so a lot of people aren't being taught, because once you understand that the God force is working from the inside out and that the God force is directed toward by your thoughts, now we can begin to get a sense of how we got to get into what is called constructive thinking, which is a disciplining of the mind. So I agree with you 100%, but I think that that's why I do shows like this, talking about subject matter. Like, I know this was a very sensitive subject that we talked about today, but it needed to be broached because we have to have these discussions if we're going to ever address these problems, because the family situation in this country is foundational under everything, and it underlies everything. People be talking about getting together, we're going to unify. I mean, you got your family together. Got babies all over the place and everything. Have divorce rate at 50%. What are you talking about? It's not happening. Unity happens in levels. And the first place you got to unify is the family. So
right, because that's the beginning stage. Family is the beginning stage of all processes of evolution. I mean, you grow from a family, then you grow into a tribe, then that tribe grows into a clan, then that clan grows into a community, and that community grows into a region, and that region grows into a nation. That's how it's done. Family is the core, but when we say plan for 200 to 300 years from now, you got to start that thought process somewhere, because everything, as the brother just said, is derived from thought. So if family is not your first thought, then we're going awry right there. And right now, it is a fad in our community to not have family as the first thought. You know, my grandmother had 13 children. And somewhere down the line, the core problem, the core issue, the core thing that attacked our families attacked us in the mind. Because right now in our mind, intrinsically, we think that children are not a blessing. We think that children are not an investment. And that's exactly what they are. If you look at other cultures are producing children so that their DNA stays around in this plane of existence. And I know that there was a lot to chew on, but if you look at the dinosaurs' DNA, their DNA has depleted. People are trying to keep their DNA in this plane of existence. That's why they're having children. But we look now, and when I look at my brothers and sisters, one or two children are enough. You know, I know that this is a very sensitive topic, and you're right, young brother. We have to have think tanks. We have to have organized discussions. We have to have strategic things in place. But we got to go back to the beginning, and that is the thought process that I am going to be committed to a woman. I'm going to be committed, if I'm a woman, to a man. And if we produce children, we're going to be committed to them. You know, we're the only species as human beings that have that long-term connection with our children. You know, other species like animals and lions and things of that nature, they don't have the long-term connection to their children when their children become adults. We're the only species as human beings that continue that bond. But now we're saying, hey, children aren't a blessing. We don't need as many children. They cost and things of this nature. And that's because of the intrinsic thought process that we have toward family. And that's what I'm saying.
That is. Okay, let me move on. Here's the thing. Okay, we got about 8 minutes left before the hour. Everybody listening on the internet, you're going to need to call in. The call-in number is 424-222-5250. You're listening to the hottest radio network on the planet. I'm going to keep the lines open. Let me go on. Let's keep gallivanting around the country real quick. Let's go over to Washington, D.C., 202-1777. You're on High Frequency Radio. Do you have a question or a comment?
Peace to the gods.
Peace to the gods, sis. What's happening? What's going on?
What's happening? I'm very much enjoying the show, and I learn and enjoy all the shows, but today is hitting on the point where you say it's spiritual. I know I was cracking up one of them shows. You was like making, I guess, repeating how some people like, man, I don't want to hear that spiritual stuff you talking about. I just need my paperwork. But you can't really calm yourself and be in orderly mind to do your paperwork if your spirit not right. So it still goes back. But definitely y'all touching on topics that I spoke about just this week about stuff, the family, the marriage. My mother and I was talking yesterday about that, just different stuff and how society has changed. But I'm glad you bringing it up, and I'm going to definitely let her listen to this show after you finish. I want to know, in planning, what focus you may have. I know trust law was a focus, or still is, but do you have anything upcoming to where I myself and others can prepare to learn from you that you may be bringing up, maybe starting around the new calendar year? That's my question.
Okay, it's going to be trust. And the reason why trust is because everything is about planning. You know, it's about planning. You got to plan your life. And when you're studying trust law, okay, you can see, and when you're putting together a family trust or something to that effect, you know, it serves multiple purposes. First of all, it's to help enrich the family. Okay, and enriching the family, that helps keep the continuity of the family together. I hate to say it, but wealth is like probably the strongest thing that can keep a family unit together is wealth. And, you know, because what they'll do is, you know, how the wealthy people do it is, you know, they'll form a trust and then they start dictating to the children things that are needed for the family. You kind of see this with The Godfather. Go back and watch The Godfather movie a little bit, and you see, look, you're going to college because the family needs an attorney. So you're going to college to be an attorney. You're going to be a doctor because the family needs a doctor. You're going to, you know what I'm saying? Everything was about the family. But what you have today is you have people sending their children to college and getting college degrees to go out and work for somebody else to enrich somebody else. And they don't realize that's what they're doing because they think when they go and work for Microsoft or something like that, Microsoft is Bill Gates' dream. You see what I'm saying? He put that together. You know, you need to be putting that. That's going to serve the Gates and their family. You know, and you know what I'm saying? So you need to do something yourself and put together a legacy for you and yourself and your family. And it always starts with one individual. Because even when you look into the histories of these families, whether they be the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds, it started with one individual. Elmshell Rothschild with the Rothschilds, John D. Rockefeller with the Rockefellers. You know, it'll start with one individual. Even in the Godfather, you see the Godfather, he came over here to this country and he built an empire. It started with him. But it started with an individual that knew how to structure and organize his family properly. And what's going to teach you how to do that is trust law. It's going to teach, and the laws of nature, nature's God, because that's what's going to be incorporated into your trust. The guidelines of the trust are going to be the laws of nature and nature's God. I put on my website, if you go to highfrequencyradionetwork.com, there's a marriage contract on there. And you're going to notice that marriage contract is pulling everything from the Bible. It's pulling everything from the Bible. So there's a contract. And I believe that if you start utilizing contracts, that's going to take down a lot of this going into court for divorces and everything, too, because now you got a contract in place. You signed a contract that is basically outlined, well, what happens if we get a divorce, how are we going to handle the raising of the children. I got a contract that's basically outlining what will dictate how we can get a divorce and how we cannot get a divorce. And that's going to make, and when you utilize a contract like that, that makes people think twice before they engage in something, because a lot of people are engaging in marriage, and I think they got in the back of their mind, if it don't work, I just get a divorce.
No.
And you know, I'm serious. Well, if that's not true, then why people get divorced within the first 50% of all marriages end in divorce within the first 2 years? So
50% stay, and I agree with you. I agree.
But I think that there's in somebody's mind there is a way out, and I think that if you would close that thing, that avenue of a way out, it'll make people think a lot deeper before they engage in it. The reason why is they've allowed people to have outs and everything, just like with rape. You know, there probably wouldn't be so much rape going on if the penalty was death. There probably would, you know, like how they okay, well, you rape somebody, you're dead. You know, that's a death penalty. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, it's gonna close off that avenue. I don't know about doing that. The same thing with well, you know, if you get married, there's no prospect, there's no possible way you can get a divorce unless he dies or there's adultery. That's it. If you can't prove one of those two things, all right, those are the only two reasons. That's going to make people pause and think. before they get married, because now people are running out getting married, because I know in the back of their mind, well, it don't work, I get a divorce. Whatever. Whatever. There's a way out, but there's not, and it wasn't intended. There was not an intention for there to be a way out. And also, you have to understand, well, what are the esoteric effects that occur when a woman loses her virginity, when she's having sex with a man, when you consummate a marriage and all that. That's not a physical thing. There are spiritual ramifications involved around those activities. And once they're apprised of those things, then they can, like I said, govern themselves accordingly. You can, understand why you are suffering right now. There's a reason why everybody's suffering in their relations right now, because they're disobedient. That's why.
Yep. I'm getting ready to check out that contract. I got to get on the I need to print it off.
This is an example.
I've heard you read, but thank you for your answers, and keep doing what you're doing, brother.
All right, peace. Y'all ought to read that marriage contract. But let's go back to the phone lines real quick. I'm going to dip over to 571-8090. I think this is Virginia. You're on the line. What's on your mind?
What's going on, Brother Yusef? I'm going to go ahead and fall back, man, because I don't want to change the energy of it. It was just that real quick, next time you come on, you had played that clip yesterday about the guy from West Virginia and the gun laws in the beginning. I just wanted to comment on that.
Comment on that. Well, we got tomorrow. It's open forum Friday. Y'all call in. We talk about all that.
You promise?
I promise. It's open forum Friday. I only did this today. I was inspired to do this today. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's needed. It's needed.
Right,
I don't want to change the energy. It's definitely needed. So peace to the guys, man.
Okay, all right, bro. Peace, God. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Let's dip over to, got about 10 seconds left. Make sure you're on the line. You're listening to the hottest radio network on the planet, High Frequency Radio. Let's dip on down to Florida, 954-695 down. You're on High Frequency Radio. Got a question or comment? Florida, 954.
What's up, bro?
What's going on? What's happening, man?
Sharif, man, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, Sharif?
What's going on, man?
Sharif,
what's up, brother? What's up, brother? You jumping on that marriage thing, huh? That's a good topic, man, because we going into this number 9 year. We're really going to have to tighten up the family, man. And it's important because it's legal society, and I know I'm not giving blame, but, we were all indoctrinated and educated as legal persons as opposed to spirit beings, natural.
Yes.
Men and women. So we have to divest ourselves of that education and get more into being natural again. And the family is something we definitely have to put back together. They systemically has divided the family. One of the things I talked about on my show was how when I watched the Ferguson issues and even the Baltimore issues, I look at things from a different perspective. I was looking at what they call the riots and the protests, and distinctly I can see women on one side of the street, men on the other side of the street, and even the kids on a different side of the street. And when I seen that, it disheartened me because I'm just looking at a complete, clear picture of a divided family. I mean, you don't ever see these protests with a husband and wife marching. You don't see the whole family marching. We don't see any of that because, first of all, if you had a family unit, I don't think you would be out there marching anyway because the march is within self, not on the street. But I'm glad you touched on that marriage thing and what really marriage is, because the legal society as a whole has made marriage something that, hey, you can have 10 of those. Don't worry about it. And
right.
We got to get back more to private marriages back in the Bible. You said that's where marriages was back. Go back to your Bible and you'll see. I don't know if they do it now. They probably took it out. But we have to go back to private marriages. And I think most of the stars that get married these days, Yusef, I think the public marriages really didn't even happen because they would know better. And understand that if we get married with the state, the only jurisdiction that state has within that legal marriage is assets that you using that Social Security number, that instrument or any other instrumentation of the legal society. That's why most rich people, they come in with private wealth. And that's what those agreements that you spoke about probably is for. It's for private wealth. Like I'm coming in here and listen, this is my wealth that I have privately, but anything we acquire publicly using okay, using the state or what they have an interest in, that social instrument, then that is part of what the state can administrate. But we get to the point where we think the state tell us what to do with our kids, tell us how to talk. If we have an argument, they go to court, they get a domestic violence. There is no domestic violence for a legal person. I mean, what are you going to tell it? What are you going to tell that fiction to do? Not to talk. It don't talk anyway. So, and I know you spoke about the kids thing. When we get into the child thing is a farce too, because I know you, and I agree with you that they're trying to do the best they could with two dead people that really think that some state should be telling them what to do. But and we forget that these states, even from a commercial side, dealing with vehicles, you know, I talk to a lot of people about vehicles, motor vehicles, and houses. I'm just like, y'all have to understand the difference in the term security interest, paramount interest, title, and then an interest. The only thing that the United States has in anything is an interest. That's it. And that's it. It's not a security interest. It's not a superior interest. It's not title. It's not ownership. They have an interest. So an interest can't tell security interest what to do. A subordinate can't tell the boss what to do. So when we get into that concept, we got to understand that even on the legal side playing that game can be played when you know what the game is, which is one of the things you teach and I teach as well. But I'm glad you talk about the marriage thing and understanding that we don't need to run away from the public side of marriage. We just need to know what it is and what we're going to put out there that the state may have an interest in. The same thing with motor vehicles, Yusef. Like, you know, people talk about all the time, well, the state can pull you over. I'm like, well, the state just has an interest in your vehicle. Interest meaning they just charge you a tax at some point. I don't mean they control the vehicle, tell you what to do with the vehicle. You didn't agree to do anything but give them an interest, which is a means for them to make some money depending on the situation. You didn't give them ownership of your vehicle. I was looking at the Justice Department. They had ramped up their civil forfeitures up to like $12 billion this year. And I'm just like, people just don't understand. Nobody can take your goddamn property and don't pay for it. You know, but people abandon it. They take it. You don't do anything with it. And they just going to take it and seize it and sell it. And you abandon your property because they have an interest in it. Interest cannot supersede a security interest or title owner.
It can.
So, you know,
when you have a paramount interest, when you have a paramount interest, and what's happening in the public is everybody's trying to get an interest in property because there isn't any money. Okay, because we're using debt paper, what people are trying to do is they're trying to put a lien on any and everything that you may have an interest in, so they're trying to lien it up. That's what's going on. That's what's going on with the courts. That's what's going on with everybody. Everybody's trying to get security interest in something, and that's why it's important for you to have a paramount interest in your particular property, why some of these processes that we discussed on some of these programs are so important. But I wanted to also go into the thing with the assets in the public. In marriage, I think assets could be protected a lot better. We could cut down a lot of gold digging, too. This is for a lot of men out there who have wealth and stuff like this by utilizing trust as well. Because this is how you protect your assets. You protect your assets by putting it in trust. And women, too, if you happen to be a woman who's wealthy. I mean, because there are men out there who like to, prey on wealthy women as well. But when you put all your assets in trust, this is what they mean by own nothing, control everything. It's about control. It's not necessarily ownership. It's about the interest, the controlling interest that you have in particular property. And that's going to be dictated by whatever kind of contractual relations that you have, which is what trust is built off. Contract trust, or, they're products of contract. So if you organize yourself in such a way where not only you can protect your wealth and protect your assets, but also convey that wealth and convey those assets to succeeding generations and everything, and begin to structure yourself in such a way where you can maintain the continuity of the family and the integrity of the family, then that's how you grow as a people. But for each successive generation to have to start over from the beginning, when your children have to start over and they have to figure out a way to buy themselves homes and cars and things like that, and then they have children, and then their children have to do the same thing over. It's like on a hamster wheel. Everybody keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again. We got to stop all of that. And the way that you do that is we have to organize and structure ourselves. And I see no other way better than to do that than through some sort of family trust. It's just my...
That's true. And one other thing I add to it, Yusef, when you talk about liens, what people don't understand, the biggest scam that the state and U.S. corporation does is that
people don't understand that you have to acquire a lien. It has to be a judicial creditor judgment lien. That means the only way you do that is by going to court and winning a judgment, and that establishes the lien. And you can learn that from different dimensions when you talk about the Internal Revenue Service. What they do is they say, now they're probably the best at collecting, because they're all debt collectors, and IRS is probably the best debt collectors. And you just look at what they do. They give you a notice of lien. And they don't get the lien. What people don't understand is that when they get a notice of lien, they actually think it's a lien. They think when the U.S. got a birth certificate, they actually think that's a lien. That is not a lien. That is a damn interest. You don't get the lien until you go to court and you acquire the lien. So they're forcing, this is why they force you, because you got two opportunities. You and I know, okay, you say you got a notice of lien, you saying you got an interest in a debt. Okay, so you have to go through the court and you have to first prove that that is a legitimate lien. Once you prove it's a legitimate lien, then there has to be opportunity for the creditor, which is you, to pay that lien. So you can very much say, I'm not fucking going to court. Just let them go in and get the lien. I'm going to discharge it. But they make you think, they make you go to court. They lock you up while they're getting a lien. I'm like, how the hell can you lock somebody up while they getting a lien? You can only lock somebody up if they got notice and then you pay the lien. In admiralty, they initially lock you up. That's letting you know it's admiralty too, because that's how they do it in admiralty. That is a characteristic. Some of the things that you see that they do, when you go and study, that is a character. That's how I know that they're practicing admiralty, because that is an aspect of admiralty. They lock up the debtor initially and everything to secure him and use him as collateral, and they execute on the liens with what's called a five-pay. Okay, whatever it is, the judgment. Once they judgment, it's an execute, and five-pay means, it's a Latin term which means you have caused it to be done. You caused all this. You're the one that caused all this, so it's your fault. And now I begin to understand what these judges mean when they say, well, everybody locked up, it's your fault. But go ahead. But Yusef, this is what I'm saying. Okay, and I understand that, and that is very clear to me. So, but how are you determining that person is a creditor unless you really don't have a claim on all interests of your legal person? They don't. And most of the time, they don't. But see, here's the thing. Here's the trick, Sharif. I want you to pay attention to what I'm going to say. They don't never have a legitimate claim. They can't, because they're bankrupt entities. Okay, how could they ever have a legitimate claim and they're bankrupt? Okay, they're a bankrupt. They can't have a legitimate claim. What's happening is this, and this is why the acceptance for value aspect of all of this comes in. This is what confuses a lot of people, especially some other gurus out there. Man, what the hell is Yusef-El over there talking about? His acceptance and don't argue and all this kind of stuff. What is happening is this straw man is what they're attempting to lean up. It's their creation. They can never lean up you, the real living person. But it's the estate that they're after, this property that they're after. And that property was created for a specific purpose. You have to understand that anything that is in the public is there for the public benefit, the benefit of the public. It's there for the benefit of the public. Okay, public and private do not mix. In the public, they have this straw man. That straw man is there to benefit them. They created it to benefit them. So if you're going to seize it, because you've seized it now by taking already interest in that particular property, maybe by filing a UCC1 or a non-UCC, and then giving a notice of claim of interest in that particular property to the government. But you have to now, you are now serving in a dual role as a co-trustee and a co-beneficiary, and you have an obligation to administer that property now for the benefit of the United States. And that is the reason why whenever you incur a public obligation, some type of public charge or something like that, you have a duty, you're kind of duty bound to discharge it or to set it off. And if you don't do that, they consider that to be contempt. And that is all that admiralty deals with in contempt. They didn't call it contempt back then. They call it contumacious conduct. But it's called contempt today. So it's contemptuous behavior when you go in there and argue. As soon as you traverse a charge and everything, they're holding you in contempt because you're saying, I don't want to pay. You say, I'm not going to pay. That's what the argument is. And I'm like, wait a minute, we made this for us, for you to, lock his ass up. Grab him, hold his ass right there and everything, because this is for us. because the public is bankrupt. How are we going to continue operating without all these straw men? They can't.
Okay.
They need
but that's where I differ, Yusef. That's where I differ because the problem is not paying. The problem is not paying when you're legitimate, but when do you get into the corruption and abuse where you just think you charge someone just because you want to? So there has to be at some point where you're just like, nah, man, you just going through that damn far. I'm not paying that shit because I wasn't in commerce and you ain't got no jurisdiction. See, this is the problems that I don't have a problem with anything. Listen, I know we're unlimited, Yusef, but you know, you can't sit up there and drive in yachts and the people walking around on buses because you just want to charge any and everybody. There has to be like a stop point to it. You say, nah, man, I wasn't in commerce and you can't charge me with that. I do understand sometimes you don't argue, and I think the people would always be fair if they really knew that they was unlimited bank account. Yusef, I'd be like, look, I'm going to give you payment on that, man, because I know I was doing 80 mile an hour in the 50. I'm going to write you this form, man, and go and take care of you. Have a good day. You see what I'm saying? But they're abusing that. You see?
They are abusing, but here's the thing, because they always operate under plausible deniability. This is one thing about these people I notice is there's always some sort of plausible deniability. I'm always looking for it. Right. And that is that this is a free will universe. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And also that is no excuse. And also anything that comes into your life, you brought it here. All right, so you cannot never ignore the spiritual ramification of everything. You know, you got to include that in there because I'm telling you, that's how these people operate. They operate off the spiritual plane. The laws, the reason that it appears that they don't follow any law because they're not following no positive laws. They're following the higher laws. The lower laws are for the slaves. If you go back and study Roman civil law, statutory law is really for slaves.
True. I heard you going in yesterday when you was talking about the municipal police department, and that's the same thing I be saying. And people understand, like, these police departments, man, they're just. I don't want to. This is the other thing when I talk about people with police. A lot of people don't understand. When you said the sheriff yesterday, I listened to you and you was talking about the sheriff is the highest authority. So I be asking people all the time, why the hell y'all be getting a concealed weapon permit? Like, the sheriffs don't offer those. Well, y'all go in there asking these police departments to do a background check, and their background ain't supposed to be but 20 blocks where their jurisdiction is. And why they pulling over state tags and they're city police officers? Like, I can go on and on and on a day. I'll be like, what the hell are you talking about? You got a tag for these 20 blocks for the city of Boo Boo over here? I'm like, come on, man. Like, the biggest example I got, Yusef, when they was talking about when I see things from a different perspective was the Baltimore incidents when they charged a police officer. Well, it was the city of Baltimore police department, and they picked the dude up and they charged him with a state crime, right, for having a knife. Well, the fucking Mobley, she said that's not a damn crime under state law. And then they switched up and said, well, it is a crime under city law. She said, but you ain't bring their ass in here. You ain't bring a little brown out here, little gray under here under state law. It's under city law. And you had to watch. You and I would catch what they was doing. So she locked the police officer up on state law. And they said, well, they try to pull up some immunity. She said, you ain't got no immunity in the state. Like, we put you in business. When you look at the battle of how they're able to turn on each other, you will see that she was saying they was trying to run back to their 20 blocks in their jurisdiction. Right. Like, well, not 20 blocks. It's a violation. She was like, nah, you brought them in here to the county jail on a state charge. So when I looked at that, I said, what do y'all see? Everybody couldn't see that. I'm like, you don't see the battling that's going on? You don't see you got to see the legal going back and forth. Yusef, they was like, we need to dismiss it because, you know, and I was like, and she was like, nah. So I said, well, if the police officers are subject to the same laws as you, do you think they got more power than you?
They are subject to the same laws you are. It's just these municipalities. If you go back, like I tell people all the time, go back and look at these old movies when you would see cities that were walled. You know, the cities used to have walls around them. Right? Yeah. And when you came into that wall, when you came into that city, you was under a totally different law. And
That's right.
And they would say, if you want to get it, you don't want to be on that law, get your ass outside the walls of the city. You know what I'm saying? But if you came into the walls, and that's the same thing applies today. They call it municipal law. Hey, man, let me.
Well, you said when they open it up to the store, brother. When they open it up to the state, then I think they kind of, I don't know. I think they open up to the public. I think that spread out the jurisdiction a little bit more. Maybe state has president.
It does.
Go ahead, brother.
It does, because the states are, they are chartered. I mean, the municipalities, they're getting their power from the state. They're getting their delegation of authority from the state. It's just like what you said. You in business because we put you in business. You ain't got no immunity from us, just like what you said. But let's go on. It says, let me go back to the phone lines. We've got a lot of people on the line. I know y'all. 260-0054. You're on High Frequency Radio. You got a question or comment? You want to chime in?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello?
How you doing? You on the air?
Pretty good. I was calling. I had a question and a comment. I was really listening to when you were reading about the women and like the virgin and all that other type of stuff.
Right.
This goes back to the family as well. What about the ones whose virginity is taken from them?
Well, that's why, like I said, that's why they had laws that, first of all, that laws where if you raped a virgin, that was death. Okay, number one. That's why they had that law in there, because of the significance of the importance of a virgin woman. But also, if you notice in there, it's not that you can't overcome whatever your first sexual experience was. All right, that can be overcome, but it's going to take a lot of dedication and work on the part of the woman. And the first thing you got to know is you got to know this stuff that we're talking about, what's actually happening to you. So you got to be aware of that first before you can take steps to correct it. But just because you had a bad initial sexual experience doesn't relegate you to a life of, of failure or problems or unhappiness or anything like that. It can be overcome, but it's going to take a lot of work for it to overcome it. And one of the first things you have to do is you have to stop having indiscriminate sex. You have to start be more circumspect of the type of men that you engage. You have to be. That is very important for a woman, because a woman is a manifester. She's no different than planet Earth. You put a seed in the earth, whatever's going to grow out the ground is whatever you plant in it. So you got to watch what you allow to be planted in you, because whatever gets planted in you, that's what's going to manifest. That's what you are. That's Mother Nature. Okay, that's who you are, the mothers of everything. So you know what I'm saying? So you got to be more discriminate on who you engage. And that's just it. And what's happening right now, people aren't discriminate. What you're using is a barometer on men that's very superficial. You're looking at like I'm in the job I'm in. Y'all look at a man kind of car he drives. You don't even just think about how he got the car, well, he can afford the car, or anything like that. You'll be looking at what type of shoes he wears, and just a whole bunch of basically superficial bullshit that really just tells me that really you're immature in your development, because you don't know how to build anything. You're looking for immediate gratification, and you're looking for a security that, quite frankly, is illusionary, because there's really no such thing as the only true security that you can really have is in constructive thought. But you're thinking y'all have all these things, and then you get then you feel bad once this illusion starts to dissipate, because you done fell for the illusion, and now some man done treated you wrong or did something, but never will you take upon yourselves the responsibility for your decision that you made and the basis for your decision. So, everything, there aren't any victims. All right, let me just make this point. And I know you talked about rape, because you preferenced this whole discussion with rape. And I didn't want to say this, but even in a situation of rape, I would have to start examining the mentality of the individual who got raped prior to the rape. Did she have some sort of victim mentality? Was she always engaged in some negative thought or something like that?
I'm talking about like molestation. Like when you're a kid, you don't have any control over that type of situation.
There is everything that happens. There's a cause and effect to everything. The law devolves on everybody, irrespective. Because then I could get into a discussion about past lives and things like that. So experience and things like that. Going beyond what would be, what this show is talking about. But you cannot inject and say there isn't any reason. There's a reason for everything of why something occurs. And behind the cause is another cause, and behind that cause is another cause, and it's a chain of events. This is what we call karma.
Okay? So in dealing with the karma of the individual may have something to do with why that particular thing happened to someone. They were put in a particular situation of why they happened, because we're dealing with experiences. Once again, we're typing discussions now that rise above thoughts of good and evil and religion. If you're not prepared to have those type of discussions, you're not going to understand some of the things I'm talking about. Because the average person, they engage these type of discussions, they on their level of good and evil. All right? But there isn't any such thing as good and evil, because there's only one power. But for the religious-minded individual, it's like I love how Reverend Ike said it. He said the devil is the mind's misunderstanding of God. Okay, people have put the devil on the level of God, and God created the devil. So how can the devil be on the level of God? That don't make no damn sense. You know what I'm saying? So there's only one power. Okay, there's one power that emanates the entire universe, and you have to come into a conscious understanding of what that power is. Everything derives from the one source, from the one point. Everything does. And there is a duality that exists in the universe that people on a low level will label as good and evil. But actually, these are just polarities of different forces, passive and negative forces, or, just whatever you want to call it, masculine, feminine, whatever. These are just different polarities that exist in the universe that need each other, because you couldn't have good without evil, and you couldn't have evil without good. Good and evil need each other. They coexist. If you could never eliminate evil, because if evil were eliminated, good would split in two, and half of it would become evil. Because how would you identify good without evil? So they belong to each other. They belong on that same. They belong on the same plane of existence. And this is a man-made concept that we're dealing with. Nature is not a respecter of persons. Nature does not get involved with good and evil, and nature does not get involved with when a hurricane hits a city and destroys and kills about 100 people. Is that evil? Nature didn't think about that. Nature did what needed to do to balance, to maintain balancement in the entire universe. That is the only thing nature is concerned with, balancement and order, keeping everything orderly going. So, you have to get into the esoteric aspects. We're talking about a rape of a 6-year-old child. That's appalling. That's appalling. This 6-year-old child, is appalling and everything. And it is. I'm not trying to, in any word, diminish what happened to that particular child. But when you look at it from a spiritual standpoint, there is an underlying spiritual cause of why that happened, and that is what you would have to examine. And most people don't take it that far and look into that. And true
I agree with you with that, because most of the time when stuff happens, when the guy was talking about families and stuff like that, because what goes on in his house stays in his house, and it's like what Sharif was saying about your thoughts. If you're not trained how to think and how to do things in a right way, you will continue the chaos, because that's what you were taught.
Well, you're perpetuating this insanity, because the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. And what people are, they're trapped in habitual modes of thought that are creating situations in their life, and because they don't know they created the situation, they're continuing to perpetuate the situation because they're continuing to think in the same way. They have to realize that if you want things to change, you have to change. You have to change things. You have to change the type of people that you hang around. You have to change the type of food that you eat. You have to change the type of things that you watch on television. You got to change the way that you drive to work every morning. You got to change the type of clothes that you wear. That's a big thing, the type of clothes you wear. Change that. You have to change. If you want things to change, you have to change. And if you don't change, things are going to remain the same. And if you're expecting things to change while you're remaining the same, then you're insane. You're insane, because nothing's going to change till you change.
Well said. And I'm looking forward to the show with you and Sister Il, because it is, a lot of people don't want to touch on the family and the dysfunction and what needs to be changed, but the preachers should be talking about this, but they won't, because they'll lose their congregations. I ain't got no congregation, so I'll talk about it. I don't care who gets mad. I'm going to tell you straight up, marriage ain't meant for women out there having premarital sex with 50 million different people, and then you thinking that you're entitled to have some sort of happy marriage or something like that.
It's not. These are not things that you're entitled to, and it's not because I'm saying it. It's because nature has dictated it, and you're not being told this because people are telling you what you want to hear instead of telling you what you need to hear. That's what's going on today in these churches. And everybody been told what they want to hear, so people can feel comfortable in their debauchery. And that's why you have a doctrine for heathens. That's what it is. You need to be made to feel uncomfortable, because only when you're made to feel uncomfortable, that's when you're going to change something. Because people who are comfortable won't change. Thank you, my sister.
Yes.
I got it.
Thank you. Okay.
Peace. Let me go back to the phone lines real quick. Area code 281. Let's go down to Texas. I'm going home. Let me go home. Go down to Houston and see what's happening real quick. 281-4648. Houston, Texas. You on the line. What's on your mind?
Peace.
Peace. What's going on, brother?
What's going on? Man, I'm listening to the show. You giving us some good information, man. Some good information. We just really need to. I've been telling my grandpa. I got my grandpa listening to the show while he's driving around Houston, going to work and stuff. I got my uncle listening to the show. But man, I got some questions for you.
Did you tell him I'm from Texas? Did you tell him I'm a Texas boy?
I was telling you from Carter, man. I was just telling you went to the high school, man. High school they should have made a movie about in the first place.
Yeah.
Making a movie about.
I know.
Friday Night Lights. I don't know why. And then they lost.
Garbage.
Why they gonna make a movie about somebody that lost the football
game? Because they
game?
mad about it. They still mad about it. They mad about that. You know, it's all the whole black schools won the state championship. I mean, they still 20 years later still pissed off about that. But go ahead.
Man, I've been emailing you, man. But I have my pops, man. He been having a whole little congregation of guys in the prison. He been locked up since I'm like 2 years old, since I was like 2 years old or whatever. And he's been in the law library. He been studying, getting his mind like trying to free himself. You know what I mean? He say he don't think he would ever thought the same or it would ever been the same person if he wouldn't have got locked up. So he's trying to really take it as his advantage or use it as an advantage. Things like that. But basically, I'm trying to get him to look into doing an abatement. I was looking into I think Don Quixote. I watched the video on him talking about the common law abatements and stuff like that. I was just trying to figure out what should I lead him? What documents should he be going to read and stuff like that? Because
I'm gonna tell you like this: if you're a beginner, go to my website. Go to highfrequencyradionetwork.com. And there are 4 documents that I suggest everybody read first. These are kind of like beginner level documents. I think that will help the beginner. You know, somebody, because there may be somebody, maybe your first time listening to this show and you're wondering, okay, what is he talking about? You know, but the whole common law abatement process is based off of you being private. Okay, you have to be private, or you know, common law itself is private. It's on the private side, so you have to be private. In other words, you have to be governed by your own. You have to be governed by the laws of God, essentially. But it's private, and there has to be evidence that there aren't any contracts that exist that tie you to the state. The number one thing that I believe, I can't prove this, but the only thing that I believe that's really tying you to the state is that Social Security number. I think that Social Security number is the biggest minimum contact that we're dealing with. That's just my opinion. I think it's the Social Security number and everything that, you know, when they seize jurisdiction over you, it's always something related to that Social Security number. So the object of the game, first of all, in living your life is to stop using the Social Security number. Now, what is the Social Security number? The Social Security number is a welfare number. All right? That's where it was instituted in 1933. It was a welfare state. You go back, anybody can go and check this for yourself. It's like the mark of the beast. Is where you stop depending on God and you started depending on man. It's like, you know, it's like you're depending on the government to take care of you. And what did it say in the Bible? Let me give you a Bible verse on that. Let me tell you what I'm talking about, because people ain't really paying attention to this public and private thing now, because this is like it's like a war between God and man. And either you're going to depend on man or you're going to depend on God. And it's very difficult to depend on God because in doing that, it requires patience. It requires you to be observant. You know, it requires you to be, you know, you have to have that third eye open a little bit more. You can't be just oblivious to everything, because how God, they say, you always hear them say God works in mysterious ways and things like that. You know, God works according to law, and you have to really be paying attention to it for it to operate in your favor, like this law of attraction thing. Okay, if you ask for something, because it tells you in the Bible, ask for what you want. Why are you asking the government for something? Shouldn't you be asking me? Okay, ask for what you want, and I'll give it to you. Oh, and there is a formula, of course, for the way that you ask in prayer and everything. What is happening is that people are depending on the government. That's what that number signifies, that you need the aid of government. Government was never instituted government was not instituted to take care of people. Government was instituted to protect people's rights. And we're the ones that really, because the government is for the people and by the people. But this welfare thing that had happened in 1933, that was the Great Depression. It was the people saying, I can't take care of myself. So then they gave you what's called the New Deal. They said, look, I'm going to make a deal with you. You can't take care of yourself. We will take care of you, but here's what you're going to give us in return. We're going to give you a number, and we're going to give you jobs. And you're going to work for us on these jobs, and we're going to take 30% of everything that you make, because you're going to help us with this fictitious debt that we created out of thin air. Because the number one thing in the Bible that it talks about this as a sin is debt. And they got us using debt currency instead of asset currency. Asset currency is currency you utilize that's based off of your own labor. That's what a private man would do. That's why it's important for you to know how to create your own negotiable instruments. It ain't unlawful for you to make your own negotiable instruments. You got to learn how to operate in commerce privately. That's what a godly man would do. There you go.
Trying to get my 9/8 EIN number and stuff like that. I know this is what's going to help me get into the private or be able to become foreign and stuff like that and not be a domestic person. So I'm trying to figure if, I know he's locked up and stuff like that. I don't know how he'll be able to, get fill out these forms.
What you can do, give him a book, One Man Out. Give him, it's on my website. Go to highfrequencyradionetwork.com. Go to the commercial column. You'll see a book on there, One Man Out. It's a real thick book. Print that out and send him a copy of that so he can start studying. All right, because the first thing you have to do, you have to arm yourself with information. You got to. There aren't any legal books. All right, and
you said, let me throw in a little something too when you get a chance.
All right, go ahead right now, because I'm pulling up this biblical verse.
Yeah, this is my take, and I know we have different takes on. This is my take with the state, as far as dealing with international or interstate law or the Social Security number. A state doesn't produce a Social Security number; it produces a birth certificate. So when they're using that Social Security number, everybody needs to understand that the term choice of law. This is where you see where the game is, because if you remove any state action to the federal court, they'll tell you that, you got to stay in the state court. Well, that's a bunch of bullshit, because that's a federal Social Security number you're using. You're not using a state certificate. So if you're using that federal Social Security number, don't tell me I can't put it in the federal court because you're using a federal identifier. That's the game. So the state court they don't issue a social. They have nothing to do with a social. That's a private number that was issued to your legal person, and you have jurisdiction over it. And the only person has a private. I don't care if you give it to them. It is still a federal number, which puts you in the jurisdiction of the federal court territory, and they never have jurisdiction over anything doing with a Social Security number, but they will use it. So when you're talking about people in the state prison, they're in the state prison under a federal number, because they're not going to get no money unless they have that federal number.
That's right. That's right.
And that's
they need that federal number.
He was asking because I kept on saying federal, when you was talking about abatements a while back, and I was telling him about it, and I was saying federal cases and stuff like that, federal. He was like, but what about a state? You know what I mean? What about the state and stuff like that? But I think all that's tied into that too. you know, or the state.
Yeah, but you split it up. Yeah, it's tied into, but you got state. That's what I'm saying. You got state overstepping their jurisdiction because the state can only deal with those they issue certificates for. That's why you get a business license in the state of New York for selling chicken in New York. You can't take that business license down to Virginia. Okay, because they'd be like, now you got to get a business license in Virginia. Well, you're damn right. But I can use that federal Social Security number in all 50 states because it's an international interstate number, but I only do that by consent. So when you got a state trying to collect on federal taxes, this is the difference in you paying taxes in the state and taxes to the federal. It's different. You understand what I'm saying? This is why Washington came up with the decision, Washington, the Supreme Court, and they was taxing their residents. If you lived in Washington and you was working in Arizona, they was taxing you both places. And the damn Supreme Court of Washington said, you can't do that. You got to refund. They had to refund like $25 billion, some stupid number, back to the people because they was charging them in both states. They've been doing that a long time. So when you take that concept and you think of it as the state is saying you're using that federal number, and the only reason why you're taxing them people in that other state is because they're using that federal number. Well, that federal number don't belong to your ass. That belongs to the federal government. So you're double taxing them. That's just what the Supreme Court said it wants. You can't double tax. So if you can't double tax, you can't put somebody in state court using a federal Social Security number, and that's the only way they're going to get paid. You see what I'm saying? That's my logic.
Another thing is, is a question of how does the state get admiralty jurisdiction, because they're using admiralty jurisdiction, and that's reserved to the federal government as well.
There you go.
So, it's like these are the things that, like, when you do a habeas corpus, you got to bring these things up, to get people out of prison. They're putting liens on you. This was the whole purpose of getting the individual master file and looking at this. It's a very involved process getting somebody out of prison. But also, I have to preference that. If you are in prison and you violated somebody else's life, liberty, or property, you probably deserve to be there. It's going to be very difficult for you to get out. It's not no silver bullet. You didn't kill somebody. You took a life. You're lucky your life didn't get taken, because really under the laws of nature, you take a life. You did. If you take a life, your life has to be given up because you didn't give life.
I'm fully in agreement with that. It's aggravated robbery in his case, but they gave him 50 years. So I'm just really figuring out kind of.
I don't know. I want to say one other thing, brother, that will help you. I'll say one more other quick thing that will help you. Y'all got to understand, and you said probably, we come from different sides. I try to give my corners, and you said you can blend it in.
Yeah.
You understand these state courts, when they in these federal courts, that land is not ceded to these federal courts. A lot of times they rent the buildings in these states. So I'm going to just tell you right now, you don't have jurisdiction because you rent somewhere. Do you understand? If they rent these buildings, that land ain't been, them federal buildings ain't haven't been ceded to the federal government.
I had a case talking about that, Sharif. I got to go back and read it, though. I got to go back and read it, but I had a case that was
big time
about them renting these buildings, whether or not they had jurisdiction over someplace they were leasing or something like that. It was a real interesting. Now you done sparked my interest. I got to go back and look, because you brought some.
Please, I know you'll go into that. You'll fillet the hell out of that, because I'm telling you, Yusef, they don't have a territory inside of places they goddamn renting. Goddamn Kentucky Fried Chicken. If you leasing, you ain't got no damn jurisdiction nowhere. You just got a business license. So if you got a business license, how you doing federal business? Now they own the military bases. Yes, that's why. That's what they should be taking you anyway, because we're under the maritime anyway, I believe. But you got to understand, they just leasing them buildings. They can shut them buildings down right now and be like, oh, we're going to close up and move somewhere else. They don't own that land. The state owns that land. So this is the games that they're playing. They're using this federal Social Security number when it was only meant for federal purposes and not for state purposes, because you don't need a Social Security number when you get your birth certificate. That's the only thing the state issues is a birth certificate. So that means the only thing, if you're a resident of that state, you can get a business license. But we go to the DMV, we make that state license international with use of that social. That's why they won't give you one without it. Well, why not? You'll give me a business license to sell chicken without a social. So why I can't get a driver's license if it's given by the state? And when I'm making it international, Yusef, then I'm under federal law, and even if I'm driving, it's federal law. It's not state law. So I know you'll play that, bro.
I'm gonna tell you why. I feel like it is because I feel like all these state of Georgia, state of Texas. These are all corporations of the United States under the umbrella corporation. That's why I think they're sub corporations of the United States. It really ain't no.
Which means it
really ain't no federal and state jurisdiction. There's
Thank
only one
you. There you go.
Federal.
That's just what there you go.
There's
you
only
that
one.
God I know. See, that's what it is.
Yeah.
There's only one.
Yeah.
They're all
only
one. They're municipal
like
federal courts that they use in that social.
Yeah, it's
right.
really not two jurisdictions. It's really one. It's federal. It's all federal.
Just one.
The United States. Everything is the United States. Hey, look, y'all.
Right.
I ran out of time today. This was a great show.
Peace, brother.
This was a great show. I want to thank my guests. I thank Brother Maji for coming on. Young Sharif, the veteran Sharif. Everybody come on. Y'all got some last words y'all want to say before we get off?
Good job, Young Sharif. Keep doing what you're doing, man. I listened to your show the other day while I was working, man. You know, you in a good atmosphere, man. You can't do nothing but elevate around that dude there. And
man,
of course, you said good job, man.
Yeah, we connect.
No, I'm opening it back up. I took it off because Facebook was sharing information with third parties. You know, I kind of look at that. But I'm going to go back on there and get back on. Next year, you know, I'll have the website up. I'll have the Facebook and all the little Twitter and all the little, you know, gadgets. But, yeah, we'll be on there, and I'll definitely let you know. And I'll plug you in as soon as we get up.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I need you on the show, man. Call it anytime. I know you got that knowledge. You was just talking about the units of beneficial interest, and, you know, that's what we talked about last week. So, you know, always business, always youth. Everybody can tune into our show. We are on High Frequency Radio Network, The Vault. I am the host, Sharif, and we just try to stick to, I just really want to stick to the business and the youth aspect because I know that we cover a lot of those other subjects on this network already. So I don't want to, I want to stay in my lane, but thank you, Yusef, for bringing up this show because the business is family and family is business. And when we structure everything like that, like he said, that trust, we'll know our roles. We won't have to worry about all this other stuff going on. So I think this generation right now, such as Yusef and Sharif, older Sharif, we've been given that trust knowledge back now. So we can operate internationally again with structure. So that's how we're going to rebuild our families. So thank you all. Peace to the mothers and fathers of civilization.
All right, peace, bro. Brother Maji, you got some last words you want to go out with, bro? I don't know if he's on. He got his mic. Open your mic up. I don't know. He might.
I was just say peace and prosperity to all the family, and make sure you get yourselves involved in something to where you are being knowledgeable about trust law, because that's our foundation. And start making commitments toward one another as it pertains to relationships, so we can begin to build our families. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. And I want to thank Sharif, brother. It's always a pleasure. Thor Radio. On, go and plug yourself,
Indeed,
bro.
God. Indeed, God, man. Blessings to you, man. Yes, Thor Radio Network. We're on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday right here on Blog Talk. You just type in THOR. I'm Brother Sharif, the primordial character and founder of that community. Emanated. I'm an alumni of High Frequency Radio. So, you know, me and Yusef used to do it up together, and Kobe and Shaq. So, you know, thank you for having me, man. I always like to, you know, get in there and twist it up, and you're doing an excellent job, man. And it's black people's time. I'm just telling you, dark people, whatever you want to refer to your time, it's your time. Just look at what's going on. It is your time, but we got to come back together and trust each other again. That's it.
All right.
Peace, brother.
Peace. All right, y'all. I just got one last word to say to y'all. Your family is your business, and your business is your family. Peace to all the guys and goddesses. See you tomorrow morning. Peace.
You're listening to Yusef-El on the baddest radio network on the planet, High Frequency Radio.